across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Thank you to Alex. She's back tomorrow morning on breakfast right here on Talk. We've got a shed load of stuff to get through this afternoon, including this. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, here's a sentence you didn't think you would ever hear, is being accused of steering Labour to the right with plans over aid and defence, welfare and the NHS. We'll come to that story in a few moments' time. Are you sensing that Keir Starmer has changed his colours? Details on the way. Also this afternoon, Donald Trump is to blame for Britain's financial woes, according to Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, with the economy shrinking by 0.1% in January. It's all down to Donald, even though he hadn't even been in power at that stage, by the way. And Russian President Vladimir Putin says he backs the idea of a ceasefire in Ukraine, but insists he will only agree to one on his terms. Talking tough over there at the Kremlin. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. You've got to hear me out on this. What about this for a headline? Starmer is shifting dramatically to the right. We have Trump to thank. It's followed by this. Abolishing NHS England is the latest in a string of radical moves. That wasn't some half-wit on Twitter that wrote that, or The Guardian being critical. That is in today's Daily Telegraph. Starmer is shifting dramatically to the right. A paper that is demonstrably right-leaning, for years backing the Tories, of late being incredibly generous to Reform UK and always attacking Labour. Starmer is shifting to the right. We also know that the Mail, the Daily Mail, has endorsed the government's latest move on abolishing NHS England. I mean, no newspaper on planet Earth could be more critical of Labour, but on this they give Starmer the thumbs up. Now, we know that Labour has so far been defined by a crock of lefty nut jobs, taking money away from areas where they know there are no votes, farmers being the obvious one, slightly well-off pensioners, if you can call 11 grand a year well-off. They've been bonkers on Chagos, hopeless on immigration, and more obsessed with human rights than Gandhi, it seems. But all of this appears to be changing. Fate is moulding Starmer into the kind of leader he never wanted to be. A Conservative. In reality, if not in spirit, he's now to the right of the Conservative Party on a whole range of issues. I mean, this is an astonishing development. Starmer's blueprint for reforming the state, which includes the bonfire of the Quangos, is underway, influenced by what is going on in America, Elon Musk, etc. The Telegraph say it is quite something to watch Keir Starmer undo so many lefty Tory policies. I mean, let's have a look at the roll call here. So this is Keir Starmer, all right? Just park for 1 second the bits of Keir Starmer that you pathologically hate, and I know that's probably all of it. So, he's increased the defence budget, not to where it needs to be, but he's increased the defence budget. He's slashed the international aid budget. He's cutting 10,000 wasteful jobs out of the NHS, and he's slashing 6 billion quid from an overblown welfare system. That list could have been read out by Donald flipping Trump. Increased defence budget, slashed international aid, cutting 10,000 wasteful jobs, 6 billion quid from the over-bloated welfare budget. Has Keir Starmer changed his colours? 0344 499 1000. Now, I cannot, if I'm perfectly honest, how long has he been in power now? 4th of July last year. So what's that, 7 and a bit months, something like that, 8 months, whatever it is. I cannot think of a single show I have done since then that has heaped any kind of praise on Keir Starmer. I still believe, by the way, that he's almost the worst kind of politician. I don't know why he's there. I don't know why he wanted to be there, other than the desire to have the job, and the old adage that if somebody wants to become Prime Minister, that should be enough reason to stop them from being so. He's all of that, a kind of professional lawyer, and fair play, that's what he wanted to do, did very well in that world. But as Prime Minister, and the people around him, man alive, I mean, look at what we've got there. People can hardly string a sentence together. People are not very bright, they've never run anything. But then I looked at this list and I thought, hang on, is this the Telegraph? I had to check what I was reading this morning. That is the headline this morning. What about this? Starmer is shifting dramatically to the right. Latest policy endorsed by the Telegraph and also the Daily Mail as well. What the hell is going on? And if you look at that list, even if you are not, and I think a lot of you are definitely not supporters of Keir Starmer, increase in defence budget. Tories did not do that. Slashing international aid. Did a little bit of that under Boris Johnson, but that caused the Conservative Party to discombobulate. The Conservatives didn't want him to do that. Cutting all those wasteful jobs out of the NHS, moving into a more techno AI generated area where you really don't need all of those civil servants. So 10,000 jobs could be gone, and slashing £6 billion from the welfare budget. Just give me your analysis. And I know when we do these kind of phone-ins on afternoons, you guys are generally incredible at the sort of armchair general position of working out what is going on here. Now, of course, when you're the Prime Minister, you've got to play a couple of games. There's more than one plate to be spun. You've got to put forward the things you promised those that voted for you in your manifesto. But you've also got to make sure you try and bring other people with you along the way, those that didn't necessarily vote for you. Of course, he's trying to hoover up areas like, for example, the Conservative Party, but also maybe a little bit of Reform UK. I mean, this stuff could be Reform UK speaking. It certainly could be Donald Trump or Elon Musk speaking. More on defence, less on international aid, wasteful jobs. I mean, that's exactly what Elon Musk is doing with Doge over there. 10,000 jobs could be gone and £6 billion from a welfare system that is so out of control. Nobody knows where to start. Well, that's a beginning. Serious question. I don't think we should have much admiration for Mr. Starmer here, but it is a genuine question. Has Keir Starmer changed his colours? 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. Let's get a word on this story and the other big stories of the day. Harrison Allman-Varty, Reform UK councillor, is with us, one of the youngest councillors in the United Kingdom, don't you know? So here it is, Harrison. Just as you hot-footed it to Reform from the Conservatives, are you likely to hot-foot it over to Labour now that they've come up with some policies that you think, well, actually, that's the kind of thing I would be thinking?
I have it on good authority, and this is going to be a talk exclusive here.
Okay.
Where Keir Starmer's getting this from. Keir Starmer has found a document called A Contract for the People, written by Richard Tice for the upcoming last general election, and he's found it, and he's nicking all the stuff, and it's working. His approval ratings are going up. I think we were all quite shocked to see the extent at which he was going for it with regards to dismantling NHS England. I mean, we were talking cuts up to 50% of the workforce. But I say right on. I think if he's going to do it, though, do it properly. There was a question, by the media by saying, are you going to cut, diversity, equality roles? And he was a bit like, no. So it's like, if you're going to do it, Mr. Prime Minister, go for it. And let's not let the vacuum filled with more quangos and useless job roles. So I really hope he can follow through on it. But he's been inspired by Reform UK, so right on. But obviously that's a consequence of having your policies out on the table. People are
it's magpie territory, right? People come on and they just nick stuff. Let's have a listen to Starmer. This was him speaking yesterday with his latest radical proposal on the NHS.
The NHS should be taken by an arm's-length body, NHS England. And I can't, in all honesty, explain to the British people why they should spend their money on 2 layers of bureaucracy. So today I can announce we're going to cut bureaucracy across the state, focus government on the priorities of working people, shift money to the front line. So I'm bringing management of the NHS back into democratic control by abolishing the arm's-length body NHS England.
And Harrison, when you see titles like the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail say, yep, this is a great move, you have to say, well, something has changed in Keir Starmer. Yes, he might have found the old Richard Tice blueprint of success somewhere flying around the corridors of Westminster, but this is seismic, and so is increasing defence spending, and so is slashing international aid, and so is getting rid of a ballooning welfare system.
There is one difference. I remember I had a meeting a few months before the general election with a relatively well-known Conservative member of Parliament, and I discussed with her quite a commercial idea on how the NHS could raise funds with local trusts. And she kind of laughed and said, it's a great idea, Harrison, but we would never do it. And when I said, oh, why is that? She went, the one person you need to be speaking to is Wes Streeting, because you'll have to understand there's very limited with the Conservatives can actually do on the NHS because of how much scrutiny we're under. Yeah, Labour almost seem trusted with the National Health, and they can be a bit more radical. I've been seeing a few tweets from a few Tory members of Parliament saying, I wish we had the guts to do this kind of thing. So there almost seems to be a few natural things that Labour can take care of because the public perceive them to be more trusted with dealing with those sorts of things, which is important to point out. But some of this stuff is more conservative than what the Conservatives did. Like, for example, the reduction in foreign aid or international development money, whatever you call it. That was then criticised by people like James Cleverly, who wanted to be the leader of the Conservative Party. So it's very interesting that Labour are shifting, and it's almost exposing the Tories for they either sat on their hands and did nothing, or they are actively a little bit more left-wing than people didn't realise. So it's very interesting. Personally, I also have the viewpoint that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves literally don't have a choice now. They probably have sat down with their top people in Whitehall and they have said, we are at the max thresholds for tax right now, whether it's corp tax or personal tax or sales taxes, we've got them right to the limit. If we put them on higher, then the amount that we're going to get back will start to fall. So they've probably gone, you're done. And they said, you need to start thinking of other ways to save money. And this is probably one of them. And I think this is an indication of what's to come in the upcoming spring statement by the Chancellor. I think this is going to be a case of where can we save money, inspired by Trump and Musk, rather than where else can we increase tax, where they know there just is no more opportunity to raise tax.
Yeah. Let's move to this story because it's kind of connected and sort of goes slightly against this idea that maybe they're taking a leaf out of Donald Trump's books, because today Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is hinting that Donald Trump's trade tariffs may have played a role in Britain's economy shrinking by 0.1% in January, spectacularly forgetting, of course, that Donald Trump wasn't really in power in January. So I'm not quite sure, well, until the 20th at least, and no tariffs had been introduced at that point. I mean, what game is she playing here? Is it just the classic political blame game?
I think Rachel Reeves will find all 8 billion people on this planet to blame before it's herself. Look, you've got to think, why is the economy shrinking? Don't get me wrong, there are a couple of things where I think, yeah, they're on the right track, but most of it, they're still way behind. And I think they still haven't discovered certain paragraphs of the Reform UK document, like, for example, net zero. It's a massive case of self-harm, and there are such easy wins by scrapping elements of net zero. I think as well, in regards to Donald Trump, I'm guessing she's hinting at maybe tariffs, but you're right to point out that this figures came from January. So I'm not really sure how she's drawn those two together. But I personally think it's a blame game. She'll find anybody but herself to blame. And there's lots of, the last time she stood up and took control, she increased taxes on literally employing people. Yeah. So that is going to have a negative effect on your economy. She has to own this. She has to say, if I was the Chancellor and I just inherited her position, I'd have gone, look, it's a really tough situation which we're in, which she said. She'd go, this wasn't going to be a quick fix. I've got a long-term plan on this. Things will dip before they come up. I'm sure she'll say that. But it's self-inflicted at this point.
Absolutely. Although she will say and cite going forward that if they get that trade deal with America, again, the Tories didn't get a trade deal with America. Are Labour going to get a trade deal with America? You know, Starmer went over there just to add to that list where the Telegraph are talking about, you know, the kind of new Messiah. Not quite, but you know, they're certainly identifying Starmer as a man who's made a huge turn. Even his meeting with Trump, I mean, yeah, OK, he looked like the little kid compared to the, you know, the head boy. But every leader that's gone over there kind of looks a bit like that. Macron, the president of Ireland, was over there this week as well. It's just the way it is with Trump. But, you know, most critics of Starmer said, well, do you know what? He didn't do bad over there at the Oval Office.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, like, Theresa May. Do you remember them walking together and him holding her hand like she was a frail old lady? Yeah, it's an element of how well can you handle the Donald. In fairness, I think he did all right. There wasn't any major blunders, and trust me, if he tripped up, people would have known about it. There wasn't really any opportunity for him to do wrong in that sense. True. I think Trump was very much on the friendly side of things. And like I said before, I think the way that Trump and Vance are going to go ahead is Trump will be, especially to the UK, Mr. Nice Guy. I've got a state visit. I'm in with the king. Let's all, you know, happy days. And JD Vance will be a bit more like, okay, why did you do this? Why did you say this kind of thing? Yeah. I think it might be a case of good cop, bad cop. But there wasn't. I personally think it would have been quite hard to ruffle Trump within that meeting because you could tell with his body language and his attitude that he wanted everything to be all right. Spot on. Listen, Harrison, stay with us. We've got more to come from Harrison, Allman Party Reform UK councillor, with us on the programme. And over to you as well. Has Keir Starmer changed his colours? You might think, what are you talking about? Look at the CV of doom that he's left behind in 7 short months. Has he turned a corner? Are things changing? He's increasing defence. He's cutting international aid. He's losing 10,000 wasteful jobs out of the NHS. He's getting jiggy with AI. He's slashing $6 billion from a bloated welfare budget. And he might get a trade deal with the United States. Is this a socialist? Sounds more like a list of things that Reform UK might come up with. 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
There are 5,500 migrants living in Kent. Kent County Council spending over £20,000 in 1 year on driving lessons and driving tests, giving them these lessons and tests free. We have to pay for our own driving lessons, and why don't they? Why are we paying for them? Why, when these people break into our country illegally, do we then shower them with gifts? Why do we do that?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Leon, who says Starmer's definitely not changed his colours. He's just doing it for the May elections. But, I mean, this is not like a little policy that after May is going to go, oh, no, we're not going to increase defence spending, and NHS England is going to go back to where it was. And the wasteful job thing, no, forget all of that. The slashing of the 6-bit, no, all of that's going back into play. I mean, these are seismic policy changes, not just by Labour standards, they're huge, but if the Conservatives did this, the Conservatives didn't do this, and they could have done. Sunak never went close to anything like this. Joanna in Salisbury says everything Starmer has said he's going to do is either able to be massaged into the system like NHS England or increase in military spending in the future long grass. I wouldn't believe Starmer or his cabinet if they said day followed night, says Joanna in Salisbury. Thank you for that. Harrison Allman-Varty is with us, having a look at the big stories of the day. Let's move to a real biggie on the geopolitical scene. This is Vladimir Putin, Harrison, saying he supports the idea of that ceasefire in Ukraine, but only if it's done his way. He's raising doubts about how it would work. Let's have a listen to the Russian president.
We agree with the propositions to stop hostilities, but we proceed from the fact that such ceasefire should be such that would lead to a permanent peace and remove the initial, original causes of the crisis.
I mean, is it hard to work out what he means by the original causes of the crisis? I mean, he's obviously pointing the finger to Ukraine, and I would imagine what he's saying is that they wouldn't let us have some land that we believe is ours.
It's very tricky because it's who you speak to, you get a different answer.
Correct.
I'll be honest, look, the past month that we've had, in my opinion, has been good for the Ukraine and Russia war because it has opened up a dialogue of sitting down at the table, what can be offered, what can be done. Now, that hasn't really been a factor these past few months where it's been a case of, oh, Russia's hit Ukraine here or Ukraine's hit Russia there. So it has shifted slightly, which I think is a good thing because we're in a stage now where it's a case of give or take, what do we want, who gets this and who gets that. I think that is instrumental, thanks to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a very unusual way of negotiating, but he's very good at it. You can't take that away from him, that he's built his wealth on the fact that he has made successful deals. And I think his tactic, from what I've observed anyway, is throw the cat amongst the pigeons and see what lands kind of thing. And I think that's what he's doing. He did that with the Ukrainian president. It was very uncomfortable to watch. It's very unusual to watch kind of someone disrespect someone in that way. I think regardless of whether you agree with Zelensky or not, I'm sure most of you will, it still doesn't sit right having a president who has gone through those sort of circumstances to be shouted at like that. However, that's his style. And who knows, it might work because Zelensky is willing to meet the president again. Things have moved on since then. And unfortunately, wars are uncomfortable. And that sometimes does involve, uncomfortable conversations in front of the world's media. I personally think I don't really know how to interpret this. All cards on the table. I think it's a ever evolving picture. I think you listen to Putin and they listen to Zelensky, and it's very, very different. And I'm sure Trump will be this mediator. And I guess the biggest thing is that it's not within the US's interest for this war to continue. And I think that's perfect for a mediator, because his intention is for it to end, because he will want people to stop dying. And secondly, he needs his country to stop sending so much money over there. Yeah. So I think this is an ever-evolving picture. It'll be interesting to see how it happens. And it'll be interesting to see how Trump handles Putin as the kind of rhetoric mounts up. Trump's kind of gone, right, Ukraine sorted, Putin, you're next, let's talk. And it might be a case of, how will that handle? Will he kind of have the same fire within his belly discussing with Putin?
And of course, Putin is, he's very like Trump. He's to coin a phrase, he's a tough cookie. To try and kind of analyse and get into. He wants to be seen as talking big, whatever outcome he wants. He can't just sort of roll over and go, yeah, I got the deal from Mr. Trump, and, bingo, away we go. He's got to say a few words about it and look as if there's some resistance there as well. Let's move on to this, Harrison. The number crunchers have been out there looking at what is happening again with sickness benefit. We now know that under Labour, the number of people deemed too sick to work has surged from 360,000, this is pre-pandemic, to 1.8 million, nearly fivefold. And Labour, which aims to save money in all of these areas, can't get away from this, because much of this has happened as well under their watch.
Goes back to my central point of they need to look at ways on saving money. But second of all, it's a definition of, okay, well, what is sick? Some people might genuinely be unable to work, whether temporarily or forever. But the definition seems to have changed the past couple of years. So it's a case of, if you go and see your doctor and say you have horrendous anxiety, and they might be exaggerating that to their doctor, and then the doctor maybe will use that. At that point, then they've got qualified that for benefits. So I think it personally needs almost like an audit into saying, where is this money going, and to what level can it go to? What is the severity? Don't get me wrong. Everybody agrees there needs to be a safety net there, but it's those that abuse it that ruin it for everybody else. And there needs to be constant auditing of that to make sure that the pound goes as far as it can in people's pockets and the right people's pockets.
Indeed. And just a final one here. I was going to say on a lighter note, but it's not really a lighter note. This is the story of the American influencer. Don't you just hate that phrase? I'm an influencer. Who do you influence? Not this woman. Of all people, I can't imagine who would follow her and say, God, she's good. She's upset Australians, including the Prime Minister. In fact, wider than just Australia, after sharing a video of herself taking a baby wombat away from its mother. Let's have a look and a listen to the clip in question.
Just caught a baby wombat. Look at the mother. It's like, oh, it's chasing after her.
I caught a baby wombat. Okay, Mama's right there, and she is pissed. Let's let him go.
No, he's right.
All right, let him go. Come here, Mama. Come here.
I mean, to coin a phrase, what a knob. I mean, goodness me, seriously, Harrison. I mean, what was she thinking? I mean, they even make the observation, oh, look, I've caught a baby wombat. Oh, look, the mother's really annoyed. It's like, yeah, the mother would be terrified. The little wombat would be terrified. She thought it was hilarious, and so did her mate filming it.
I mean, it's just stupid.
Deport her! Send her to jail!
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. It's like if you saw a duck with its ducklings and you take a baby duckling and it's like, well, of course the mum's going to want it. It's like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Unfortunately, we're in this age now where you will literally do the weirdest, most annoying or even upsetting things just for a couple of views and clicks.
I thought the Prime Minister's comment, Anthony Albanese, said, why don't you try it with a crocodile next time, see how that works out. I don't think she would, or even a kangaroo for that matter. Try nicking a joey and see what happens. You get a kick in the whatsits.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It's stupid. I think if you hear the term influencer, yeah, just shut off really, because you can influence one follower on
Yeah.
Instagram, can't you? And then
And I know, look, I know it's not the biggest crime in the world, but it's just a bit mean, and to be able to. She can't separate her fact from go. Oh, I didn't realise there was a mother. You know, she took a little baby from its mum, albeit momentarily. It was just a bit unpleasant. She's obviously a half-wit. The fella filming it ain't much better either. They thought it was really funny.
I don't find it funny, and I don't know who would find it funny. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, she didn't take it or anything, but it's just unnecessary. Like, I mean, what's she done? I mean, I don't know. I can't compute to room temperature IQ, unfortunately.
No, indeed. And breaking news as well, Australia has just declared war on the United States over this. So the Australian Air Force will be out over there, flying over the hills of Wyoming. It's not going to be long before the White House make a statement on this. United Nations. Yeah, it's all happened all over a wombat. Harrison, have a great weekend. Thank you. Harrison Orman-Vati, Reform UK councillor, with us here on the programme. We're looking for your comments as well on Starmer. One here says, Starmer moving to the right, my bottom. Best to see what plays out. Usually it's smoke and mirrors. He hasn't slashed the foreign aid. He's tinkered about a bit. Slashing would cut down by half. NHS England, nothing has happened yet. He's slightly raised the money for arms. Well, yeah, he has, but it's all in the direction. Foreign aid cut in order to pay for defence. That shows the intention of priority. The wasteful jobs in the NHS could be 10,000, 6 billion off welfare. Has Starmer changed his colours? 0344 499 1000. Sir John Redwood is a lifelong Conservative, former cabinet minister, of course. We'll get his take on this in just a couple of moments. Most importantly, of course, it's your response on that number. And you can, of course, drop us a voice note on that number as well if you want to bypass the queues, or send us a message on 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one from Christine, who says, yes, I like all these things that Starmer is saying, but do you think he will do any of it? You have to bear in mind he's a bit of a fibber, says Christine, on the Isle of Wight. Very politely put as well. Keir Starmer being accused of steering Labour to the right. Suggestions his recent policies reflect the influence of Donald Trump's bold political strategies. His plans include slashing foreign aid, boosting defence spending, reforming welfare and overhauling the NHS in what he calls a bonfire of the quangos to streamline government. And while Starmer hopes these moves will win back voters in former Labour heartlands, critics warn he risks alienating the party's more left-wing supporters. Has Keir Starmer changed his colours? Let's speak to Sir John Redwood, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister. John, good afternoon to you. Always good to gauge your views on these things. I mean, you've been around the block enough times to know there is always a bit of a game has to be played when you're in the top job and those around you. What is Mr Starmer doing here? Because when you read the list, as I just read it out there, I mean, it sounds like something Donald Trump could have come up with.
Well, I think he's terrified. I think he's going from the left to the wrong, basically. If you take the economic situation, why are they making these cuts? It's not because they believe in them, and some of them aren't terribly sensible. He's making the cuts because the OBR, the Treasury, all the advisors have told him and Rachel Reeves that because they crashed the economy and there is no growth, if they don't cut spending, then there's going to be another surge in mortgage rates and the economy is going to get even worse. So they're under their own Treasury cosh. And then when it comes to Trump, they've spent their time in opposition slagging the man off and being thoroughly objectionable about him personally. They had to try and win it back because they saw that ending up on the wrong end of Donald Trump's ire in this current situation would be disastrous for Britain. But they can't even do that properly. You know, they're giving the Chagos away. Don't give it away, save us some money, and Trump will be very pleased you don't give it away. They send Mandelson as the ambassador. They're told that he doesn't want Mandelson. He was quite happy with the ambassador who was already in post, and he asked that she stayed on at least for the inauguration. And then this business about wanting to be a global statesman, spending other people's money and putting our troops at risk. I think he thought Trump would like that, but when he started to do it, he was actually getting in the way of the Trump negotiating strategy for peace.
Do you sense, though, John, I mean, we can look at all the... and you're absolutely spot on. I mean, there were things he's got to do because there is a, you know, I sense a tsunami of economic woes coming around the corner over the next, certainly in the short term and possibly into the longer. But either way, these things are going to happen, and they're things that ordinarily you wouldn't... I mean, you can't imagine Jeremy Corbyn, for example, cutting foreign aid and defending more on and spending more on defence.
No, I mean, that was an extraordinary decision he took. But again, he decided that Trump was putting so much pressure on because NATO isn't putting its weight on this side of the Atlantic. And the Conservatives had promised to do this, and he had to try and keep up with the promise they had put out, and they were going to pay for it in a different way. So he then decides to pay for it by cutting overseas aid, which is left won't like at all. But if you look at the other things he's doing on spending, I'm not sure he's going to cut the bureaucracy in the way he said. Let's say he does cut 9,000 jobs out of the health service. Well, we've just put on 300,000 extra jobs. So it's not going to make a lot of difference to the numbers. It's not suddenly going to be a decline in the cost of the health service, because that is quite a small number of people, though each one will suffer if they are truly made redundant. And as for the slaughter of the quangos, well, I'll believe it when I see it. And he still hasn't named any apart from NHS England.
Did anyone ever slaughter the quangos, though?
No, of course not. The last government was hopeless. I mean, I've always said that. I was a strong critic of the last government, you may remember, offering them ideas which they, on the whole, didn't take up.
They didn't seem to take any ideas up, the last one, which is perhaps it explains why they are where they are right now. In terms of winning elections, winning over voters, I mean, it's always said that elections are only won from the middle. Is that still true, the centre ground rules?
No, I don't think that is true, and I'm not sure it was ever true. I think governments are elected by constructing coalitions of voters, and you have to know which groups are most likely to vote for you and then include their main asks in your offering. And it's more difficult now because people don't divide clearly into right or left. We all have a bit of right and a bit of left in us, and you've got to try and construct coalitions of visible groups. But this government's gone out of its way to upset a lot of really important groups, like small business people, like the self-employed, like the people who need to drive cars and vans around without impediment. and all of us who are very worried about deindustrialization and the surge in our energy bills. And this government drives on with this relentless, extreme net zero, destroying the economy. And then they wonder why there's no growth. I mean, yesterday we saw that why there's no growth. There's been another surge downwards in industry because they can't afford to keep the lights on.
Yeah. This thing of taking people with you is key, isn't it? I mean, if you look back to, Mrs. Thatcher back in '79, she wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but there were people who weren't natural conservatives who thought, you know what, I'm going to go with this. Tony Blair, in fairness, 1997, lots of Tories thought, not usually my cup of tea, but this fella looks as if he could make a difference. That's the bit you have to have. Starmer definitely doesn't have that, does he?
No, he doesn't. And you see, well, I was, as a young man, I was an advisor of Margaret Thatcher in the middle period. And we made a deliberate offer to people who had been voting Labour and said, look, we want you to buy your own house. We'll help you buy your council house if you live in a council house, or some other house if you don't. We'd like you to own some shares in the company you work for. We'd like you to have proper savings for your pension. And we discovered there were literally millions of blue-collar Labour voters who thought that was a much better idea than high taxes and all the left-wing rhetoric. And so we built that coalition. That got destroyed later on.
Why do you sense that the Conservative Party at the moment, I mean, they have a new leader, but don't really appear to be making many inroads, John, at the moment? I mean, there's been some spectacular open goals for Kemi Badenoch to shoot a few in, hat tricks on a weekly basis almost. That ain't happening.
Well, I think what's happened is that there's been very successful campaigning by Reform. And so a lot of the people who were already fed up with Labour went off there because their offer was seen to be sharper or whatever. Maybe that's getting into a bit more trouble now because we see that they're finding it rather difficult to stay as a cohesive unit with some of their best people no longer able to work with their leader. But I think Kemi needs to become more vocal. I think she's beginning to face up some important campaigns, but I think you win back trust by campaigning on things that need changing now and saying how, if you were the government, you would change them. But they've also got to show they have changed, because on some of the big things that have driven people away from Conservatives and then from Labour, like excessive immigration, like the inability to stop the small votes, like the high taxation, it's very important that Kemi now shows that she has decisively changed and has learned from the mistakes of the last government.
Just finally, John, back to where we began, Keir Starmer. I mean, if he continues down a path that is more logical, perhaps, and more attractive to voters, and it's not just because of political expediency, but it's actually because, in his core, he's actually learnt to believe, do you know what, there are better ways to govern, and he's found a new roadmap, as it were. Can you imagine Mr. Starmer becoming a greater success and taking people with him going forward? Has he learnt from those mistakes in 7 months?
No, I don't think he has yet, although I obviously wish him well. We're going to have 4 more years or so of him, and I want our country to be better governed, and I would love it if he cleaned up the quangos and cracked the productivity problem. It's costing us 40 billion more to run the public services than 6 years ago to just achieve the same results. There's been this catastrophic collapse in productivity, and there are lots of things he could do. I'm very happy to help him with those that would actually give us a better delivery by the public sector. But he hasn't learned his lesson yet. He's not relieving the family farm tax. He's not relieving the national insurance, which means that we're going to have fewer people in employment and very little growth in this economy. He's not reversing the net zero excesses so that we are lumbered uniquely amongst the advanced nations with the dearest electricity in the world. These are the things he's got to decisively change on. Snatching some money away from disabled people or stealing the pensions fuel money is not going to make him popular.
Yeah, true enough. John, as always, thank you for your time. Sir John Redwood, former Conservative MP, former Cabinet Minister, former advisor to Margaret Thatcher back in the day. Over to you on all of this. I mean, we are in kind of strange times, really, aren't we? I mean, there's no money left. A friend of mine sent me a copy of his, the council tax bills are coming through now with the new revised hike. His has gone up to just over £4,000 a year. So you pay that over 10 months, don't you? So what, £400 a month in your council tax? Not your mortgage, That used to be mortgage territory, didn't it? 400 quid a week, that's average mortgage. In your council tax, damn it. In your council tax. We talked about this yesterday, about life becoming more expensive, whether it's food, whether it's petrol, whatever it happens to be. Trying to get have a swift pint at the end of the week. What, a tenner for a pint? Man alive. In parts of this country, that's what you'd be asked to pay. And even in places where things are ordinarily cheaper, because of geographical considerations to these things, it's still expensive. I mean, it's madness out there. And what we're not seeing, it's not as if you're being asked 4,000 quid for your council tax and these great services are all around you. You can't see anything for it. I wait to see what they do with mine, but I'm sure you've experienced that as well. Is Keir Starmer turning a corner? Has Keir Starmer gone into government and gone, do you know what? I had some great, more socialist ideas, and I'm fast realising that these aren't going to be popular. He can't. I mean, the pension of fuel tax, winter fuel allowance, that's done now. So the VAT on private schools is done. The farmer's inheritance issue is already done. So we can't undo those. Well, he could if he wanted to, but I doubt whether he will. But is the other stuff bold, brave, and a new future? Has Keir Starmer changed his colours? 0344 499 1000.
So you don't get a trans role going to someone straight. You know, it doesn't work that way. It only works against white people.
And that goes back to our previous discussion. Men are never referred to as people with penises, whereas women are constantly referred to. There's a variety of choices, aren't there? There's people with breasts, people who menstruate. It's sexist because it doesn't cut both ways. And I might suggest
and it's racist.
I might suggest that colourblind casting arguably is racist because they don't do it the other way.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Matt in Devon, who says, if Keir stands up and says, I've told the Royal Navy to turn every boat back, then I'll think twice about voting elsewhere. Debbie says, when that influencer has a child, she'd have that child momentarily taken away just for a laugh. Yeah, how would a mother feel? Sean says, sorry, but taking that wombat is no different to whipping a fish out of a lake for fun before throwing it back. Both are wrong. Well, I don't know if you could prove that. Would the fishy have to be near its mum? Starmer is all about smoke and mirrors, says one here. And Brittany from the USA says, Starmer is doing this because if he doesn't change, then he knows the USA won't help the UK. Plus, he's doing it because he knows that King Charles is in good standing with America. Maybe there's something in that as well. Thank you. Philippa is in Dorset. How are you doing, Philippa?
Hi, Ian. Lovely to speak to you today.
You too. What are your thoughts?
Love being on your show.
Thank you.
Well, Keir Starmer has never changed his colours. He's always been far right of the Labour Party. You knew that the minute he ousted Jeremy Corbyn out of office, because there was no way that this country was going to let the Labour Party have a socialist Prime Minister. And that's always been Keir's game.
So do you think Keir Starmer is actually Jeremy Corbyn in terms of his policies?
No, not at all. The absolute opposite. The absolute opposite.
So he's actually a Conservative, almost?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Because he's got to appeal to a mass audience of voters. So he promised all the things that he thought Labour voters would vote him in for.
Yeah.
And now he's backtracking on every single thing in order to remain in power and do what he actually wants to do. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with the British people. It's what he wants to do.
Will it turn his fortunes around? If there was an election tomorrow, for example, Philippa, and there's some sort of wavering Tories, could they hold their nose and vote for Starmer, going, well, look, I didn't like a lot of what he's done, but now he's started to do stuff that, Rishi Sunak didn't do, so... yeah, maybe he's all right, this guy. Well, I would find that extraordinary, but maybe people will be thinking that.
Who knows what's in the mind of the electorate? I think there's just so much going on politically, both nationally and internationally. It's like, well, what on earth do you do? Because there's just so many problems that needs to be fixed. So you've just got to... me personally, I've been a Labour voter all my life, but I'm not anymore. I'm looking at reform policies. I want to know more from Nigel what his policies are. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in the infighting, because I want to find out what they're actually going to do if they get the chance to be in office, and whether they're going to stick to what they say they're going to do.
Fair enough.
That's all people want, is politicians who are in power to actually say what they're going to do and stick to it and follow it all through.
Philippa, great call. Thank you. Nice to talk. Have a great weekend. That's Philippa down in Dorset. Let's move to Ricky in London. What do you got for us, Ricky? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. I normally don't say afternoon or hello to you, only because of my nerves. And I think, I never said afternoon.
That's all right. Listen, I've never noticed.
So that caller, I think, no disrespect. Right, the thing is with Jeremy Corbyn, he didn't lie. He said this is what's going to happen, and they were far left socialist policies. Yeah. Let's face it, we know what we was getting.
Yep.
When Starmer come in, he knew if he told the truth about what he was going to do, he'd have never got in. No way. So he lied. So we've got a liar as PM. That's basically it. He hasn't moved over to the right. He's had no choice. These far left loony policies, they don't work.
No, they don't, and they've been proven not to work. There's no country in the world that could go, this socialist stuff really went well. Because it doesn't. It will never go well. But then nothing else is going well at the moment, Ricky. Is there some kind of weird middle ground where, everyone could say, look, let's do something to make people feel a little bit as if there's some kind of purpose in terms of services and wages and taxes?
No, because he's not just the Prime Minister of this country. He has to play his role in the geopolitical landscape. We're living in the days of empire, the days when you could tiptoe through fields of daisies, identifying as a cat, are over because you're just going to get swallowed up. So he's had to accept via Trump that we've got to spend some money on defence. All these left-wing loony policies, even DEI now, the banking industry, they've accepted that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We're running out of money, so he's had to find some money by cutting the foreign aid budget. Transgender ideology, all these policies, all these mental policies are evolving to the point where people realise that they're mental.
Yeah, and you can sort of just about get away with a little bit of mentalness if everything else is tickety-boo, right? If the rest of us were doing well and life was at least affordable and there was, sort of hope and the health system was working great and your kids' education was in full safe hands from the government perspective. If all of that was happening, you could go, all right, OK, go and have your little DEI thing, give it a go if it makes you happy. But of course it's not. So all we see is a government wasting time and effort on nonsense such as that.
As Maggie Thatcher said, socialism is good until you run out of other people's money. And he's running out of other people's money. We cannot afford socialism. It's as simple as that. So he's not moving to the right. He's had to accept right-wing policies. There's a reason that Britain had an empire, because in the days of the British Empire, lefties didn't exist. And that's basically it. So all this left-wing nonsense, it doesn't work. History has shown that it doesn't work. Yeah. And that's why Trump is succeeding. That's why Europe is moving over to the right. Because all these left-wing, transgender, loony policies, that you just have to give them time to evolve. And then people realise that they're actually...
the world's gone completely upside down. Listen, it's a great call, Ricky. Nice observations. Thank you, mate. Have a nice weekend as well. Thank you to Kaz as well. Brilliantly picking up on how we defined the American influencer who momentarily nicked a wombat. That's a strange sentence if you've literally just tuned in at that point and don't know what I'm talking about. Dallas Nash says Starmer is simply doing to Trump what Blair did to George Bush. Yes, he's going right up his rear end. If he crawls any further, poor Donald will have a nasty lump in his throat. That could well be true. And this from Jane. Starmer has only temporarily changed to gain votes in local elections in May and possibly take back some votes that Reform were likely to gain. But he'd have to do some really monumental unpicking and go, oh, yeah, all that stuff I just announced in the last couple of weeks, none of it's happening now. I'm going back to being a Corbyn-y kind of, I don't know. I'm only asking the question because the jumped out at me this morning when the Telegraph one of the main headlines said Starmer is shifting dramatically to the right and then heaped praise on him for doing it. Do you think Keir Starmer has changed his colours? 0344 499 1000. 2 o'clock now. Let's get the news headlines.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We head into the weekend. Yes, it's weekend territory. We're the middle of March already. Christmas is round the flipping corner, kids. We've got a lot to go on the programme this afternoon. Keir Starmer being accused of steering the Labour Party to the right. Yes, you heard that correctly. To the right, with his plans to slash foreign aid, to boost defence spending, from welfare to an overhaul of the NHS. There's a growing list of things that many, including the Daily Telegraph, are suggesting that Keir Starmer is edging and nudging towards a right-wing agenda. Has Keir Starmer changed his colours? We'll talk more about that and take your comments as well. 0344 499 1000. Also this afternoon, Donald Trump is to blame for Britain's financial woes. According to Chancellor Rachel Reeves, the economy shrank 0.1% in January. Trump was hardly in power for most of January, so how she made this connection, I've no idea. Number 10, we now learn, has distanced itself and completely disagreed with Rachel Reeves. That's never a good look. And the government is set to ease a proposed hybrid car ban due to concerns that EV sales targets are squeezing manufacturers too tightly. And we'll also talk about an area that we haven't really talked much about before, electric vans. Are you the driver of one of those beasts? How does that work out? Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. This in from Stuart. Starmer is not changing his colours. Some people from NHS England will be moved to Westminster to do some job in Westminster, as they were doing in NHS England. Others will be moved to other public sector departments. And finally, a few will get massive payoffs for voluntary redundancy, allowing them to retire on a full pension at 50. Same old Starmer, lying, deceiving the public. You know the signs to tell when Starmer is lying. His lips move, says Stuart. You're absolutely right. In the civil service, you've virtually got to commit second-degree murder to lose your job. So these people that Starmer is talking about cutting the waste, there may well be some compulsory redundancies. But it's going to be really hard because the unions are up in arms about this and they're quite powerful. But they've been empowered by the very government that's now arguing again. I mean, this is the lunacy of where we're at. So you have that and, others, as Stuart rightly says, will just get moved. I mean, it's such a massive swamp, this whole civil service thing. You work at the Department for Culture, you move to agriculture, or they'll take you from health over to education. Very few will go, and the ones that do go, the kind of, if you're a long server, if you're a lifer over there at the civil service, the redundancy package will be worth it. I mean, it'll be a very impressive financial amount of money to take away from you, take away from the workplace into retirement. 0344 499 1000. Has Keir Starmer changed his colours? Could you hold your nose and vote for Keir? When you look at that little list we read out earlier, this is the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail as well, broadly supporting the NHS England thing. So is something changing? I'm merely asking the question. I'm certainly not endorsing the fact that I think something's changing, because I think much more is going on. Let's get a word from Chloe Dobbs, political commentator on this. Never thought, Chloe, good afternoon, by the way. Never thought I'd see the day the Telegraph running with headlines such as that. Starmer shifting dramatically to the right. And, one columnist, Cheryl Jacobs, kind of heaping a bit of praise on Starmer for some of his moves.
I will actually give him a little bit of praise. I definitely would not go as far as to say that this is now a right-wing politician, but I think he's starting to say things that sound a little bit more commonsensical. It was quite a car crash when they came into power. Normally politicians will have a sort of honeymoon period after they step into number 10, but they quickly mess that all up with the winter fuel payment cut, the tax on farmers, both policies that wouldn't really change the coffers really that much for the Treasury, but were deeply, deeply unpopular. So they weren't very smart about what they did. But now it seems like they're starting to wake up a little bit. I think cutting bureaucracy in the NHS is a good move. We'll see how it's implemented. I doubt it's a silver bullet to completely transform the NHS, but it seems like a step in the right direction. Things like cutting foreign aid and boosting defence spending, they do seem a bit more like Tory policies and a little bit more commonsensical. But let's see, when it comes to implementing these things, can he be successful? Will he be able to unite his party? We're already seeing disagreements in the party about foreign aid cuts. We saw Annalise Dodds decided to walk the plank because she was upset about foreign aid cuts. And then we've got Yep, and then we've got changes to the welfare payments, potentially, which might be deeply unpopular amongst some of the MPs on the Labour benches. You know, it's been quite hard for Keir Starmer to transform the party from the Corbyn era to something that's a little bit more centrist. You've got quite a wide range of opinion on the benches. Is it going to be possible for him to do what he wants to do? I mean, he's got a big majority, which gives him a bit of leeway so that there can be some disagreement in the party and he can still get things across the line, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I kind of, you know, there's a bit of us that wonders, you know, has he had a reality check? You know, has somebody taken him out the back, given him a big shake, and, you know, he walked out there and Tony Blair was sitting in a deck chair in the garden with knuckle dusters saying, you know what you need to do, Keir. And now he's got cosy with Trump. Today he's distanced himself from the comments made by Rachel Reeves that the economy was down a bit because of Donald Trump. I mean, that's quite interesting, isn't it? If Downing Street are dismissing claims made by the Chancellor, publicly dismissing those claims, then something's up there, isn't it? Something's not right if they're willing to do that.
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer has massively changed tune on Donald Trump. We've got the old videos of him saying that Trump is, I think he said he's a danger to the world. He wouldn't have him round his house for dinner. Really clearly thought that Donald Trump was an evil man, like many people in the Labour Party. And then he sat down next to him in the Oval Office, giving him a nice letter, inviting him for a sleepover with the King, and all of this being all lovely to him. And he clearly was worrisome about Rachel Reeves having a dig at Donald Trump, because it's quite important that he has a good relationship with Donald Trump. I think he's woken up to that fact, but whether he can get all the other figures in his party, I mean, there are plenty of them that have said horrible things about Trump in the past. I mean, dare I even start on David Lammy, who's the foreign secretary.
Yeah,
will he be...
a colourful litany of descriptive ways of how he viewed the president. It was interesting when Number 10 were asked about this claim that Rachel Reeves had blamed Donald Trump's tariffs for the kind of slight contraction in growth. The Number 10 spokesman simply stated very firmly to a load of political journalists, said no. And that, you know, that tells you something. So could this spring statement that Rach is bringing to us in, where are we now? March? I've lost track of where we are. Next month, right? Is it next month?
I don't know the exact date. I can't remember.
April, May, June. Is it? I keep thinking it's nearly Christmas. It's so cold out there at the moment. So the spring statement, I will get the exact date in a second. The spring statement, 26th of March, so we've got like 12 days to go. Could this be her last big moment? And then Starmer says, right, here's my next phase of going a bit more right-wing, although Rachel Reeves was seen by people as being on the right of the party anyway, which is interesting.
Well, I mean, some people may say that, but that's not what I've seen on her track record as a Chancellor. I mean, there's no way you can call yourself right-wing if you do a budget that has 40 billion quid worth of tax rises.
Yes. Yeah.
She clearly...
We've got the receipts, Rach.
Yeah, she's clearly not had a good start as Chancellor, and then throw in the scandals we've had, finding out that she was apparently under investigation for splashing the cash on the company credit card when she was working for Halifax. It's not been a good start for her, so I'm not surprised that she's trying to turn the blame towards Donald Trump, because she's worried. She's probably a bit worried about getting fired. So this will probably be a bit of a make or break moment for her, the spring budget, because she knows that if what she does is, again, deeply unpopular and upsets businesses and doesn't really give people much confidence in the economy, then she might be out.
Well, indeed. I mean, it's been suggested before that, you know, this could be a very short-lived time at number 10 or number 11, but we'll watch with interest over the coming weeks. The other area I thought was quite fascinating, Chloe, was an announcement today, which doesn't sound like the biggest announcement. The government is set to ease proposed hybrid car ban. Because they wanted to say, no, not even hybrids are good enough. You've got to go full electric, otherwise the world's going to die and chimpanzees will get ill and cactus in the desert will no longer exist. All of this stuff, this is a doomsday scenario. But it is a watering down. And if you put that alongside, I mean, the Heathrow expansion, which curiously, Rachel Reeves and Starmer supporting this. Ed Miliband, who you would in any other world would have simply walked out the door and said, I'm done with you lot, bearing in mind his entire credibility rests on net zero. You don't endorse an airport or a runway if that is your position. But of course they all like a bit of power. They don't really want to go, so he's rolled over. Could net zero be the area that, if they dilute things, airport, hybrid cars, there's the oil field as well, where there's some rosehip, I think it is, isn't it? Is it rosehip or rose? The name escapes me. Oil areas, drilling, all of this stuff. If this begins to dilute, do you think that, specifically net zero, could be the area where people come back to Labour?
I think that Rachel Reeves is clearly trying to cut some fat where she can. She's had trouble with a lot of her fiscal headroom being taken away due to increasing costs of borrowing, and it looks like they are trying to put pressure on Ed Miliband, or forcing him rather, to cut back on some of his net zero targets, and I think that will be deeply disappointing to Ed Miliband. I don't think they're going to abandon the whole project. I don't think they're suddenly going to start sounding like the Reform Party when it comes to net zero policies and say it's a load of rubbish, we're not bothering. But I think that I'd like to hope that we'll maybe see some of the policies about shutting down access to gas, fossil fuels. You know, we've had Ed Miliband saying he's going to cement over the last gas wells in this country. Hopefully they realise that's not economically viable. We need an income stream from that at the moment. We're not yet in a position to be completely reliant on renewables, so we need to have a little bit more of a common sense approach to it. I hope that that is the direction that they'll head in, but I still expect them to be investing in renewable energies for the future, which I think is a good thing, as long as you're not spending an amount that's completely obscene and completely impoverishes the country in the short run, and doing things like putting cement down the last gas wells in the country is bonkers.
Yeah. Rosebank was the oil field that I was trying to think of, not Rosebud, not Rosehip. Rosebank was the one. And we mentioned Ed Miliband there, and of course, you know, very, very passionate man about, you know, climate and all the damage, and as I mentioned, the chimpanzees and the cactus, all of that stuff. You know, feels very strongly about how we change our lives. And, you know, flying, shouldn't do too much flying, because that's very, very bad. I mean, flying is public enemy number one, unless you're Ed Miliband.
Well, he's just flown to China.
Well, that's the intro to the...
I mean, I don't think that he kayaked all the way there or anything like that, but
yes. So
presume he took a plane.
Hence the point. I mean, he's gone to China. I mean, what's the deal there? Has he never heard of Zoom? Because I used Zoom last night very successfully. It worked a treat. And, you know, I didn't even have to be in the same postcode as the person. It's the 21st century. You can be in a different country with Zoom. Who knew? Well, apparently Ed Miliband doesn't know, because he's gone to China with his entourage to have a chinwag about climate.
Well, yeah, they're often very hypocritical, these eco-warriors. And I'm sure you'll have seen, Ian, the Amazon rainforest being chopped down to make way for a road for the COP30 conference in Brazil, which is just
the only way to do it, isn't it? Build
on
a
an
motorway.
insane level.
Build a motorway for COP30. I mean, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ed Miliband has gone abroad, as does Keir Starmer, as does Rachel Reeves, when their popularity is suffering at home, because it's a nice break. You can go and be wined and dined with champagne by foreign officials who are all nice to you, when at home everyone's being horrible about you and saying bad things about your policies.
Spot on. Listen, Chloe, as ever, thank you. Chloe Dobbs, have a great weekend. Political commentator with us here on the programme. Thank you to her. Over to you in a few moments. 0344 499 1000. We are going to talk electric cars or hybrids. Are you a hybrid person? And the electric van as well. Whenever we do debates on or phone-ins on electric, we always concentrate on the car. But have you got an electric van? I never really thought about it. I mean, they are out there. Do you drive one? Does it work in the sense of, you know, are you able to keep it on the road for long periods of time without having to stop and recharge the thing? Back to Keir Starmer. Stuart in Wigan says, is there anything more certain than Starmer scrapping their 2030 net zero plans? Reality is dawning fast that net zero is not only impossible in that time frame, it will destroy growth and energy security. It's why I don't take much notice of Miliband and co. They'll be sacked long before it can do serious damage. I do sense that probably Rachel Reeves, Ed Miliband, yeah, I think that we could see those characters being moved out. By the way, I speak as somebody who will buy an EV van, says Stuart, but that's because they're ideal for local work. For most families, they won't be suitable. If you've gone EV in the van department, I'd like to hear from you. And also, whenever we've discussed this, many people have talked about hybrids as being the optimum compromise, if you like. Works a treat, much more efficient to use and much more reliable. Do you share that analysis? 0344 499 1000. This is on the back of the government set to ease its proposed hybrid ban due to concerns that EV sales targets are squeezing manufacturers too tightly. Thoughts on that as well? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
This is going to be her interviewing, so it says, leading female business owners and discovering their journey. Well, if you listen to the Archetypes one that she produced before, it was basically her sort of talking and not engaging with her guests. She's got to change the way of approaching it and actually trying to get something out of the people. She's not particularly good at that. You even see it in the cooking program. You know, it's all about her, and the guests were never really felt as if they were part of it.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And this is Herbie in Harrow. How are you doing, Herbie?
Very well, Ian. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you.
Well, I could say Sir Keir Starmer is a wolf in sheep or lamb's clothing, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you watch him change. Nothing about the boats, nothing about the migrants coming over, nothing like that. The cost to our nation still, nothing about that. So what is he? Is he picking and choosing as to what he wants to tell us all?
Do you reckon, though, let's fast forward a year, Herbie, do you reckon it's possible that Starmer would stand up in the House of Commons and go, I've had a long think about this. Sorry it's taken me so long, but as a previous texter mentioned to us, I'm sending the Royal Navy in. We're going to sort this thing out in a week. Can you see that?
Well, no, certainly not at all. No way. Oh, do leave off. I mean, this is why he's picking and choosing as to what he wants to say, what he wants us to believe. Local elections are coming up, so he needs to do something because of the unpopularity of the government of the day. So he's got to try and, smooth things over if he can. This is one thing, but, 9,000 people are going to be laid off. What's going to happen next? Bearing in mind April the 1st comes, and when we've got the national insurance contributions, how many more people are going to be laid off?
So can he turn anything around here? I mean, look, if you're a die-hard Labour voter, you're probably going to vote Labour regardless. But at the last election, of course, he hoovered up votes from somewhere. I mean, it wasn't... it was a big landslide. It wasn't a massive share of the vote. So there must have been other people voting for him who wouldn't normally do so.
He got through on a pack of lies, wasn't it? Nothing of the manifestos really, come from fruition at the moment. It's all been other things, but the manifesto itself has not come to life. And, as I say, he's picking and choosing. He got elected on a pack of lies like the rest of the government did. And, we're now paying the price for it. And I think it's going to be disastrous. Next week, I think, is the budget, isn't it? Or, mini statement or whatever you want to call it. And let's see what happens then. I don't think there'd be quite a few surprises coming out on that one. They're going to have to tax us more. As I said, they weren't going to put up taxes. And what's happening? You're taking taxes and taking money out of people anyway.
Yeah, indeed. It's not a pretty picture, is it? It's not been great. Herbie, thank you very much indeed for that. This one in from Dale, who says Starmer is saying what we want to hear, but really it's the opposite. I can't see this man, trust this man as far as I can throw him. And that goes for the whole of the Labour government as well. Leela says, how could anyone think that Starmer is on the right? It's ridiculous. Have we forgotten what he's done? Well, that's kind of the point of politics, isn't it? That you hope people will forget what you've done. That's certainly the direction of travel. This one from Jane. Keir Starmer has only temporarily changed to gain votes. I think I may have read that already. There's a few people making that very point. One here says, when Starmer stops sick benefits and suicides start, let's see how popular Starmer is then. And this one from Mr. Glenn, who says, you also forget cutting the winter fuel payments and getting people off benefits and back into work. Tory Starmer, God help us, says Glenn in Leeds. And Gary, afternoon Ian. Starmer is moving to the right because he's trying to create better optics for the Labour Party while the Reform Party is in turmoil because he sees reform as Labour's biggest threat, says Gary in Shrewsbury. Yeah, he definitely sees them as a threat. He's already, one would assume, decimated some Tory seats at the last election, people who voted for him who would... I don't understand why or how that happened, but it clearly did. He got a big landslide out of it. We can talk about share of the vote all we like, but he got a big landslide nonetheless. Let's get a voice note. We're also talking about hybrid cars here, and is that the way forward? Starmer has changed his view on that. This is Andy.
I use company cars, and my previous company car was a Skoda diesel. On that car, I used to average anything between 68 to 75 miles to the gallon. My newest company car, which is a hybrid Toyota, I now struggle to keep it above 55 miles to the gallon.
Now that's interesting. So the hybrid isn't working out as well. And often people say, well, actually, it's the better compromise. Or is it? Are you hybrid? Are you signed up to the hybrid revolution? Hybrid revolution, is that you? And what about the electric van? We'll talk more about that shortly as well. John is in Bristol. Reference Ed Miliband. John, how are you doing?
Good afternoon to you. Very well, and good selves.
Yeah, good as gold at this end, thank you.
Right. This regard Ed Miliband,
Gone over to China to save the planet.
Hypocrite. He should have taken that slow boat to China, as that old record used to say years ago.
That might have been good.
And taken a sailing boat, and may hopefully run into a storm and be shipwrecked on a remote island and become Robinson Miliband for a long, long time.
Robinson Miliband. Can you imagine? It could be a reality show where, like, once a week, everybody checks in, gathers round the TV just to see the latest exploits as Ed cuts a coconut and slaughters a lizard.
Exactly. Great. Great on you. Great stuff.
Love it.
Thank you.
Cheers, John. Good man. Thank you for that. I was just going to mention something specific to Ed Miliband then. He's gone to China. He's gone to save the world. That is the idea. You see, look, when Ed Miliband says he's going to save the world, then I don't think anybody should really take him seriously, right? I mean, he's so attached to the whole net zero thing. I've never quite been able to work out sort of where it specifically came from. He was an advisor in this area to Gordon Brown, of course, back in the day. But prior to that, was this always, I mean, he's a lefty, right? OK, there's nothing wrong with that. We're not North Korea. We live in a democracy. If you want to be a lefty, that's fine. And if you want to have pet issues, that's fine as well. I just question, really, the kind of level of evangelism that is attached to this. Look, if the world needs to be addressed because of pollution and all the horrible stuff, I don't know a single person that wouldn't sign up to that wouldn't say, yeah, of course we want a cleaner planet. You remember, back in the day when buses and lorries were belching out horrendous, full-on leaded petrol guff into the environment. We're really glad it's not like that anymore. When factories were bellowing out smoke and all manner of toxic nonsense out of chimneys, when trains were belching out coal-ridden poison from that little chimney on the front, all of that stuff, we're glad we don't have that anymore. Everybody wants to clean the place up, but the speed with which and the cost with which is the area I think most people divorce that. If you can run the planet cheaper and cleaner, do you know a single person that wouldn't sign up to that, ultimately? But of course, the method by which Ed and his department, and therefore by connection the Labour government, have done this is so rapid, so expensive, in so many areas unproven, and technology yet to be fully invented, that it ceases to be taken seriously. And all they had to do is run parallel. Let's get we want to get the windmills going. They're going to be, most of them going to be out in the sea, so you won't notice the darn things. We've got a windmill tech story coming up a little later about what they're going to be doing to wind turbines. But if you ran it in parallel with, have your solar panels and stuff. I go on a dog walk with my dog in the morning. Loads of houses have got the solar panels on. Fine, nothing wrong with that, OK? If you're getting free electricity, I wish I was. So, yeah, great. It's kind of working in that respect. I think we can rely on it for the entire energy-based infrastructure of the United Kingdom. We simply cannot rely on it in that respect yet. Now, maybe 20 years' time, things will look rather different. But in the meantime, let's go parallel rather than obliterating what we know is working in order to get something that as yet isn't fully tested and there is no demonstrable proof it could take over the entirety of fueling this country. That's all I think most people are asking for. Do you want cleaner energy? Yep. Do you want cheaper energy? Yep. Ed goes, there's a way to do it. Yeah, in about 80 years' time, mate. And that's the problem. 0344 499 1000. We will talk EVs, particularly vans and hybrids, in just a moment, right here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
More from you in a few moments' time. 25 to 3 now. So Keir Starmer is set to ease a planned ban on hybrid cars amid criticism that the government's electric vehicle mandate is putting manufacturers under intense pressure. For many people, the hybrid is the perfect compromise. But for the government, no, they've got to go as well. But could he be changing his tune? The Department of Transport had intended to outlaw certain hybrids after 2030. Alongside the petrol and diesel ban for new cars, that is. The UK boss of Kia has called the mandate perverse, warning that it leaves manufacturers feeling like they have swords held above our heads due to strict sale targets. Let's speak with David Bailey, Professor of Business Economics, Birmingham Business School. Good afternoon to you, David.
Hello there.
Nice to have you with us. I know you've written a lot about the auto industry. I mean, this is a curious one, isn't it? You ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers as to, what we need to be doing. Some say we're going too fast, some say too slow, others say hybrid all the way, some it's EVs all the way. There's the economy, of course. Against the backdrop of all of this, are people even buying these cars, which is bound to drive the debate one way perhaps or the other. And today we hear that Keir Starmer could be easing the planned ban on hybrids.
So I think it's not quite fair, that report. I think essentially the government have reintroduced the previous government's policy of banning petrol and diesel from 2030, but allowing hybrids until 2035. But neither the Conservative government nor the Labour government ever defined what sort of hybrids. So late in the day, they're now consulting on that, or rather they did just before Christmas. And the industry, not surprisingly, is saying, let's have as much flexibility as possible. And I think that's the way to go, because as you were saying, for many people, hybrids makes a lot of sense. And actually, it's still an improvement on the straight internal combustion engine. So let's, as you said, run things in parallel. We might not be able to have a pure petrol car anymore, but give people a chance of a hybrid, which is an environmental improvement. And as EV prices come down, they'll take over. So I think that's where we're getting to.
And I think also, on the wider issue of EVs, there's a lot of ambiguity, isn't there? Like if somebody said to me, at the moment I drive a petrol car, at some point that will change. I might go for an electric car. If somebody put a gun to my head and said, what are the benefits of the EV car? I get the climate bit, but I honestly don't know. It feels like remember when Bluetooth was first invented and you couldn't. It sort of worked, but kind of didn't, and sometimes it was all right, and you're trying to pair it with a device and all manner of things, and you get frustrated. And we hear so many stories. I know lots of people who've got an electric car would never ever change it. They love it, everything about it, it works, and it's cheaper. And then others, of course, tell the very opposite story. It's still, which one do you buy? What's the thing with the batteries? Can I change the batteries? Changing the batteries like changing the engine, of course, in an electric car. There's all of these big questions over the entire industry, it seems.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And huge uncertainty for the industry about the rate of speed of take-up. So car firms have been making really big investments on making electric vehicles, and demand hasn't taken off quite as expected. Let's be honest about that. I'm a fan of electric cars. I've been driving them over 10 years. But we're in a situation where demand is not picking up as quickly as anticipated. Yeah. There's a number of reasons for that, I think. The upfront cost is still too high. The lack of an infrastructure really outside of London and the southeast also puts a lot of people off, and that's a big issue as well. For many people, they do work. So if you can charge at home on an overnight tariff and you're only paying 5% VAT, it's a no-brainer. Go for it. For many other people, it doesn't work at the moment. And particularly if you don't have your own drive and you can't charge at home, you're relying on a public charger, that's 20% VAT, it's much more expensive. So at the moment, it isn't working for everyone. I think we need to recognise that.
Yeah. And also, many people make the argument, and it should be listened to, that actually, the carbon footprint of an electric car is not squeaky clean. It's not without some questions, and that could be in terms of how it's constructed, the weight of the car, etc. There's some issues around braking and weight, or the rest of it, the transportation of. They're not carbon neutral, these things.
No, we're not. They're not going to get us to net zero. but they are an improvement. Let's be clear about that. So making an electric vehicle requires more carbon than a conventional car, but then it is so much cleaner to run that over time it gets better, and the longer you run it, the better and better it gets. So overall, it's an improvement, but it doesn't get us to net zero. Let's be honest about that. I also think there's an issue about the deadline. So the government have really gone for a target of 2030. The rest of Europe, the European Union, is going for 2035. 2035 is okay because the average life of a car is 15 years. It'll still get us to 2050 is the target date for net zero. So the government have been, I think, far too ambitious in 2030, and I think this flexibility about hybrids is kind of recognising that, really.
Yeah. There's so many U-turns and changes with Guy. Of course, we've had a change of government, and the last government had a change of leader every 7 minutes anyway. So it's quite been. Forgive me for even doing this for a living. David, it's quite hard to keep up, as I'm sure you would sympathise. Did the Tories go 2035 and then Labour changed it to 2030? I'm trying to remember the order of events here.
So initially, the last government, the Tories were 2040, then it became 2030, then they put it back to 2035, and Labour said, no, we're bringing it. So everyone's confused.
So everyone.
No wonder the industry itself is confused.
Yeah. Just a random question. I was reading a piece this morning, I think it was in the Telegraph, Andrew English, the journalist, who had an experience with an electric van. We don't hear an awful lot about electric vans. They're clearly out there, and manufacturers have ploughed millions into making them as the future of transportation for couriers and those that need a bigger vehicle for their work, etc. But the jury really does seem to be out on the van. I mean, that's a whole different debate.
Yes, it is. And there's a similar kind of policy again with these mandates. So manufacturers have to hit a certain target. If they don't meet it, they get fined, which is deeply problematic. Having said that, you are starting to see a lot of vans, particularly in cities and in terms of deliveries. We order so much stuff these days online. For the final kind of mile of delivery, where a van going around dropping stuff off and then maybe going back to a depot where it can be charged, that's actually pretty good in cities, and it could really help in terms of improving air quality. It's also a great British success story in that Stellantis is investing heavily at Ellesmere Port to make electric vans. So we may see more made here in the UK, which is good news.
You're right. Yeah, and I saw the Amazon guy in our road a couple of weeks back. I thought he was actually jump-starting his van, which you don't see very often these days, because it was just silently going down a bit of a hill. I thought, I know what he's doing. Oh, no, it's electric. That's why I couldn't hear anything. So they are out there, and, of course, electric buses as well are also out there.
They are, yeah. I've seen several electric buses recently, and also hybrid buses as well, coming back to your earlier point, which are a great way of improving the emission situation of buses. That's going to require longer-term investment, and also a great success story in the UK with buses, electric buses and hybrids being made in the UK as well. So what I want to see is not only this transition that we're talking about, but I'd like to see stuff made in the UK, not all of it coming from China.
Yeah, we've got the wherewithal, we've got infrastructure, we know how to do this stuff. It's not like, we're new to the game. So absolutely spot on there. David, thank you for your time, sir. I really appreciate that. David Bailey is Professor of Business Economics at Birmingham Business School. Thank you to him. Over to you on this one, because I genuinely, I know I've said this before, I would not know what the kind of tick box would be. When you go you go to buy a car and you look at the mileage, and mileage expectations have changed, or what's on the clock has changed, because cars are made differently. So if you were buying an old Ford in 1987 and it had 70,000 miles on the clock, you'd think, I'm not going near that. But if you were to look at a pretty good Merc, BMW, Volvo, whatever, Audi, that had 70,000 miles on the clock today, that would be fine. It's very different times. So you know that with a car. When you go into it, you sort of know you've got a familiarity with the vehicle. If I was going electric, I don't know, is 30,000 miles on the clock, is that good or bad on an electric car? Does that mean it's near the end of its natural life? It's not in our language yet. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not. It doesn't land as a sort of tangible fact in your head. Oh, look, an Audi Q5, it's done 60,000 miles. That's totally fine. It's 5 years old. Brilliant. I'll go for it. Here's an electric version. I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answer to that. So how do you kind of satisfy yourself that what you're buying is okay, unless you're buying brand new, is okay? I honestly couldn't tell you. Your experience, and how much money do you save or not save with your EV? John's in Derbyshire on this point. How you doing, John?
All right, Ian, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Last time we spoke about EVs, and I said to you I'd also have a chat with you about the NHS. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. Yes.
Cars. Yes, we'll save that one.
Yeah, well,
right.
We can have EV ambulances, maybe. There's a combination.
Yeah, we've not done that yet. We have leased some ambulances, but they definitely are diesel.
Yeah, true.
But Ian, let me clear it up for you about the electric cars. I'm going to make it really simple. The guy that's just been on cleared lots of points up on EVs, but we buy thousands, and I set the resale for them when they come back. And they come back at various mileages, and obviously most business people are leasing EVs for their area managers and so on because they don't want to pay the benefit in kind.
Yep.
So we do a lot of Tesla. And I've had a Tesla. We do a lot of Polestar, and I've had a Polestar. Now I've got a BMW. And the only thing I would say about them is they're soulless. So from a car point of view, if you're a driver, if you were either a bit of a petrol head, it's like driving a go-kart.
I think we were going to say a goat then. Yeah, maybe it's a bit like that. You're absolutely right. I see, when I'm out and about and I see a really tasty-looking vehicle coming around the corner making no noise, I'm just a little bit just quite disappointed by that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the only downside. But I suppose that what outweighs it is this: my BMW will do about. Oh, sorry, Ian. Somebody keeps ringing my office phone. My BMW does about 250, 300 miles on a charge, and it will cost about £6 to do that if I charge it at work. Yeah. Now, you can't get any form of petrol or diesel car to do that.
No, not anywhere near.
No.
That'd cost you. What would that cost in, 70 quid, 60 quid?
No, over 100, I think.
For that vehicle?
Ian, it depends what you're driving.
Of course,
20 miles per gallon. Yeah. And all the area managers and so on, they all drive Tesla Model 3s and so on. But that is a huge saving, and also there's no wear and tear in. Yeah. I had a guy followed me on your calls last time, and he said, "Oh, they wear the brakes out." Utter rubbish. They're regenerative. So if you take your foot off the accelerator in an electric car, it virtually stops because the power goes from the battery to the wheels. So our CEO has got a Model S of 16 plate. He's a bit old school, and they change his brake pads at 90,000 miles.
Blimey.
Now, you won't get 20 out of a petrol or diesel car.
No, you'd have done it 4 times by then.
And I've got an ex-military friend with 2 Model S's that does VIP work, running people about like talk radio presenters. And they've done 600,000 miles.
600,000?
Yeah. Now, Ian, not one has ever burst into flames. Anybody that says they burst into flames or they break down or they in hot weather or the battery wears out, it's nonsense.
What about those stories that EV cars burst into flames? Are they? Is
nonsense,
that
Rich? Nonsense. I've been doing this job 27 years. EVs have been out about 8 or 9. We've literally got thousands. Not one battery on any vehicle has ever gone wrong. And of course, what you've got, Ian, you've got budget EVs, like you've got budget cars.
Yeah.
And then you've got premium cars, which are considerably better. So if you go for a premium EV, then you get the niceties with it. But I'm not a massive fan. I'd rather have a V8, but I do hear a lot of nonsense about the battery depreciates, they wear tyres out, the brake. I can absolutely assure you that's utter nonsense.
That's interesting.
Now, the vans.
Vans, yeah.
Different world.
Is this a whole different ball game?
Well, they brought the vans out. The biggest thing that affects EVs are 2 things: cold weather, hot weather, cold weather and weight. So Ford, for example, they've got the custom. They say they'll do 163 to 200, do about 150.
Okay.
But we've got them on a list of people that pick linen up from hotels in London. 100 mile a day.
Yep.
Beautiful. Cost them nothing.
Yeah.
You start putting tools in that for your local builder.
Well, I was thinking that if you look at some of the kit and the plant that goes into the back of a builder's van, you're going to get about 20 miles out of that, right?
Yeah. So they can't address that because all the weight in the vehicle is the battery.
Yep.
They're only going to ever address that when they work out to get the battery to do further distance. So the vans, we're not ready for the vans. But I've got cars coming through now, Ian, that will, within the next 2 years, that will literally do 500 mile on the charge.
That's incredible. What is
They're going forward. They're going forward.
What's your take on this kind of, well, in the States they're calling it a Tesla rebellion?
Yeah, because of Elon Musk's sort of...
So those that don't like Elon Musk or Donald Trump, basically, Tesla have struggled. There's no, it might not. I'm not sure it's down to that. I think it's down to the fact that there are many more models on the market now. Surely.
Yeah, they've got the competition like BYD, which is a Tesla. I've driven a BYD, really impressive. Obviously, the Chinese are flooding the UK with other vehicles, and it's only because when Tesla first hit the market, nothing else was to compete with it.
Yeah.
So now we've got a lot more choice.
I think it is that. And also maybe it's also people are trying to be a bit more original. I mean, you know, a mate of mine said, I'm going to buy an electric car, definitely not a Tesla. I said, why not a Tesla? What's wrong with it? He said, nothing wrong with it. It's just that everyone's got one, so I want something different.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they just have had the front. They've had the front. Well, the other thing, Ian, they've got the charging network. So if I plug my BMW in at work, it probably needs all day. But I'm at work all day. Whereas one of my colleagues in the next office plug his Tesla and he can be on full charge in 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So they have the ability to charge their cars quicker.
Yeah. How did they manage to get a network in every country in the world relatively quickly?
They have, yeah. And I mean, Ian, don't get me wrong, I'm not a huge fan. I find it boring. The most boring thing I ever do is get in my car and drive home.
Right.
And I just don't. But then I don't have to put fuel in it. I don't have to put brakes on it. I don't have to put tyres on it. And you know, there's the problem for the driver. Well, the only other thing, Ian, just to add to this, is obviously when we first got electric cars, BIK was 0, Brent in kind, road front licence was 0. So you've got this clownish government now adding road front licence on electric vehicles. So your Tesla, for the 3-year contract, the second and third year is an extra £1,300 road front licence. So then they've put 2% BIK on. So what they're doing is, you must sell more electric cars and be greener, but by the way, we're going to charge you more.
They're going to charge you more, and it's always down. It's going to be down to the money, isn't it? John, I have to step in there because we hit the clock. Very thorough stuff, and thank you. Have a cracking weekend. John in Derbyshire knows his EVs. How well do you know yours? We'll talk, by the way, about who's winning the electric car battle when we talk tech with Will Guyatt in the next hour. Right now, lines are open. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
you're suggesting that this is all it's all Rachel Reeves' fault that there's no growth.
Well, it is. She's the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Yeah, but normally when I say what public spending would you cut, you go foreign aid, but they've cut that. So what next?
I've never actually said that. I don't think I've ever said that. Well, I wouldn't be giving minimum 18 billion pounds to the Chagos Islands.
Oh, come on, Mike.
Mauritius.
That's 90 million a year. It's pocket money.
Well, it's not pocket money because amortised over the years it's going to be 52 billion.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Paul says, it's Michael Caine's birthday today. Please wish him many happy returns. Do we know officially, because we've got a little joystick where we can work out who's listening to us. Is Michael Caine listening today? On the, I think he is, isn't he? Our little database, which tells us all the. Amy says yes. It's Amy that presses the special button. Michael Caine is 92 today. Now, not a lot. No, let's not go there. He says, rumour has it Ian Collins is going to be the next James Bond. I'd be hopeless at that. Paul, thank you. Back to your calls. Gary is in Brighton. On EVs, Gary, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Fire away.
Cool. The point I really wanted to make was just to sort of fast forward the conversation a little bit. And in some hypothetical world where the UK got to net zero,
yes,
what will it have achieved? And how will people reflect on that? Like, I feel like...
We don't die, apparently. That's...
Well, so you obviously get where I'm coming from. I mean, I would buy an EV tomorrow if I felt it was going to make a difference.
Yep.
But right here, right now, we logically would be the last sort of developed country to be getting on that bandwagon because it won't make one iota of difference. Whereas what we could actually do, rather than virtue signalling by driving around in Teslas, is we could do what we've always done as a country, which is invent stuff that will, like new energy technologies that we could then sell to China.
100%.
And then when they get to net zero, then we'll just pop on the bandwagon at the end,
Because that's a good point. Because they've got to get there first, right? I mean, they've got to do it before anyone, because without them, the whole thing collapses.
Well, and nobody ever asked the question. I know you guys can't, but I'd love if you could get Ed Miliband or Caroline Lucas or someone on the phone and just say, all right, so when we get there, other than impoverishing all of our people, what will it have achieved?
Yeah. What's going to be the tangible... What's when they sort of flash up some stats on the screen, what are they going to say?
Like, because it feels like I could say, right, I'm going to spend the next 3 years of my life training to be an Olympic sprinter.
Yeah.
And then, I don't qualify. It's like, it's a complete vanity project.
That's interesting.
All that's happening is we're making our people, when we're already pretty poor, we're making our people even more poor.
Well, they will say that there's less carbon in the air and therefore that's good for the planet. That would be the simple answer, wouldn't it?
But I don't think we live in a localised climate, do we?
We don't. Yeah, there's a special climate just for us.
Yeah, they're quite keen to throw words like global around.
Yeah.
And yet we're led to believe that the UK is suddenly going to be this kind of like, nirvana when we're all driving around in Teslas, and it's just, it's so full of lies. I have to feel that there's I know there is, plenty of alternative agendas.
And of course, as I said before, Gary, we all want a cleaner environment. I don't know anybody who doesn't want that. And if it can be cheaper, all the better. But having a sort of an evangelical bankrupting policy doesn't seem to be the best way to get there. Listen, Gary, I've got to run. I love that analysis from Gary there down in Brighton. Thank you to him. We're going to speak in the next section, by the way, to Dr. Mike Jones on that issue of the Ghanaian fraudster who can return to the UK after becoming depressed. I mean, you can't make this story up. We've also got the voice of doom. It's a brand new voice. Mystery voice with a political angle to it. Who is this?
I said something then.
Who is that? So it could be a politician or connected to the world of politics in some way. Another listen.
I said something then.
Do not phone in because you ain't getting a prize, OK? So, but you can message in if you fancy joining in with us on 87222. Whose voice is this?
I said something then.
It's quite a soothing voice, isn't it? Can we hear it again, Amy?
I said something then.
Who is that? 87222. You want to have a crack at that? If we get a right answer, we shall reveal all just after the 3 o'clock headlines. If we don't, it'll roll over till tomorrow. I think it's been one every day this week, on day one pretty much. We'll find out in a few moments' time. Dr. Mike Jones joins us, the political scientist and migration expert, on some really curious stories out there. And Will Guyot talks tech with us a little later as well, particularly who's winning the race for EVs. If it ain't Tesla, then who is coming out on top at the moment? Details to come on the other side of the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, come on, we're into the weekend almost. It's exciting, very exciting. A bit chilly out there, you know, it's a bit chilly out there today, but it's mid-March, right? It's not quite, we're not in the spring territory just yet, although the daffs are out, as Minan would have said. Coming up in this hour, we continue to talk about Prime Minister Keir Starmer being accused of steering Labour to the right. Yes, you heard that correctly, to the right, with his plans to slash foreign aid, boost defence spending, welfare reform and overhaul the NHS, as a lot of the old left is not happy with him. But when the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph, start lauding him as a man of change, do you sense he's changed his colours. More calls from you on the way. Meanwhile, Science Secretary Peter Kyle, the cabinet minister responsible for artificial intelligence, reportedly used ChatGPT for policy advice and to decide which podcasts to appear on in order to reach a wider audience. Yeah, they got the AI going over there at the Science Department. And Border Force staff who monitor and tackle small boats in the Channel are set to strike for the first time, raising fears of a surge in crossings. The only reason I'm laughing at that is like I didn't know we had any Border Force down there trying to stop and tackle small boats. Deary me. More on that in a few moments. 0344 499 1000. This in from Bob in France. Don't forget, hybrid batteries will need changing at great expense. And notice Ed is away when another change to net rubbish is announced. That's a good point. Chris here. The problem with electric cars and hybrids is the massive environmental impacts on making them. The chemistry required for those batteries causes enormous damage. Not only that our electric grid is ancient and couldn't cope if everybody went electric. I read in one of the newspapers recently that the environmental footprint of an electric car, including manufacture, is actually worse than running an efficient modern car, internal combustion engine car, for 10 years and then recycling it efficiently. I do hear, it's interesting you raised that, Chris, because I hear variants of that story. I think, was it Volvo that at one point, I think they had it on their website. I've got this wrong. I apologise, Volvo. There's no criticism of you in this. I drive one of your cars, guys. But it was something on the lines that they looked and realised that actually the electric versions, when this was said, a couple of years ago maybe, the footprint was far worse than your standard petrol car. And, of course, the bad press that diesel cars get, bearing in mind how engines... when people talk about diesel, it's as if people are going around in a 1978 Ford Escort Mark I or something, or an old Capri. You know, like a diesel in a modern car is such an incredibly well-engineered and developed and considerate engine. It's off the scale. And, of course, you add things to it to address environmental concerns. It's just become this word that has been kind of hijacked. Dirty diesel, you filthy pirate. It's got that kind of person non grata. You want a diesel car. Well, your diesel car may well be more environmentally friendly than your neighbour's 1400 Ford Fiesta. Just because yours is big and got diesel and theirs is small and runs on unleaded. I mean, come on. Learn a little bit about cars and what it takes to run one and various engines from different eras. Then make a judgment. I also want to bring you this story as well. It's extraordinary. Border Force staff who monitor and tackle small boats set to strike, raising fears that a surge in crossings could happen. Around 120 members of the PCS union say they aren't paid enough for tackling migrant crossing, drug smuggling and weapons trafficking. It's the first time these patrol crews who work year-round have ever taken strike action. Who knew? The move comes as more than 4,000 migrants have so far crossed the Channel this year, a record number for this point. It does make you wonder. I don't want to malign Border Force staff, who I know work very hard, and I know there's not enough of them, for goodness sake. But, you know, if you've got 4,000 migrants successfully coming over to this country in literally 12 weeks, then, in fact, less than 12, you have to wonder how that tackling small boats is going. Let's get a word on this from Dr. Mike Jones, political scientist and migration expert. Mike, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you.
I mean, obviously, I don't want to be unkind to our Border Force people, but it does make you scratch your head a little bit when you say, you know, there's too much going on. We can no longer tackle the boats. And I'm thinking, is anyone tackling the boats?
No, I mean, I'm not going to weigh into the pay scandal there. I'm not privy to those details.
Fair enough.
You know, people have been hit in terms of real wages in the public and private sector. So obviously, I'm very sympathetic to people who are working in those industries. But essentially, the Border Force operates as a taxi service. They're not there to, you know, push back boats or return them unilaterally to France. But that's not their fault.
No, it's the individuals that work within it. They're literally just carrying out the instructions they have, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we're signed up to UNCLOS, which is, the UN laws of the sea, and obviously you can't allow boats who signal for distress to drown in the channel.
Yeah.
Sort of moral and legal issues there. I think the more interesting question is if the strike does go ahead, what's going to happen? I think that's a really interesting question, because the immediate gap would be in, patrol boats like the cutters and the CPVs, the coastal patrol vessels.
Sure.
And, those crews intercept migrants in the channel, and, they coordinate with the RNLI and the French authorities. What is the British government going to do in response to this? I mean, one option would be to bring the Royal Navy in. Now, the Royal Navy are not adapted to intercepting small boats. Could they do it in theory? Yeah, sure. They could use sort of offshore patrol vessels like, HMS Medway, for example. They could also use their P2000 fleet, the Archer vessels. And, they've got the capability, they've got radar, speed, and trained crews to do this. And they've done this in Operation Isotrope, which took place in 2022. But will the Royal Navy be happy about this? Absolutely not. They'll be completely furious.
Because this will leave a vulnerability there. I mean, people will joke about, hang on, is anybody looking at these boats? But you're absolutely right. The border force do something. They might not do what people think they should be doing, but the fact that their presence is still pivotal in the day-to-day running of our borders. Now, if they disappear, sure, that sends a big old message out there, doesn't it? It will take half a second for the boys with the boats in Calais to go, hello, happy days. I mean, it sets the scene for a bigger problem.
Well, possibly. You've got to realise a lot of these boats don't have enough fuel to make the whole journey. And obviously, the longer they're in the sea, the more dangerous it is. I mean, an interesting question is, if the gap wasn't filled properly, would the number of boats actually slow down? I don't know. I'm just being speculative.
That's a very good point, because I don't know how health and safety conscious sounds quite bizarre when you consider what we're talking about here. These kind of boat people, the masters of the boats are. I mean, we could take a guess, not very, but I guess simultaneously they need their boats to get to the UK.
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, the smugglers don't care about the lives of the people on the boat. So they'll just send them out there. I mean, if a gap were to emerge, the boats will still come.
Yeah.
I think potentially you could have more deaths in the channel, and that could present problems to the Labour government. So I think they will fill that gap. It could be the Royal Navy, or it could be a triage system. The Royal Navy could actually supervise the crossings supervise the operations in terms of intelligence, but you could actually have private sector organizations coming in to fill the gap. So it's very, very interesting.
While you're with us, Mike, I'm bound to raise this story. It seems to be one of these curious stories every day. This time it's a Ghanaian deportee, a fellow called Samuel Frimpong. He was convicted of using fake documents. He's now won the right to return to the UK under human rights laws. An immigration tribunal has ruled his deportation violated Article 8 of the European Court of Human Rights, citing his family's depression and struggles. The judge overturned the Home Office's decision, stating his kids' isolation made relocation to Ghana insurmountable. I mean, is this how it works now? That if somebody happens to have had a kid here, or their kids are here, then it doesn't really matter what you've done, to be honest, as long as you're not in jail, you win the right to stay.
It's been like that for decades.
Yeah.
But, thankfully we have people like yourself on Talk who are actually drawing attention to this, so it's now on the political agenda. But in terms of long-term illegal migrants, Article 8 is invoked frequently. Article 8 is the right to a private and family life. Now, this pastor, he essentially faked documents to try and get indefinite leave to remain. The documents were found to be forgeries. His application was rejected, and he actually spent time in prison. So he went back to Ghana, I think, in 2013.
Yeah.
He then appealed when he was in Ghana to a sort of first-tier immigration tribunal. They rejected his claim. He appealed to the upper tier. and the judge, is he called Abid Mahmoud, I believe. He basically said that his family were depressed, facing all sorts of economic hardship here in the UK. They needed to be united. They invoked Article 8, and this has happened time and time again. And it all comes back to the Human Rights Act.
Yeah, and he was a pastor as well. A man of God, faking documents. Whatever next?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole panoply of fraudsters out there, and the cases are usually quite absurd. They go against sort of common sense and natural justice.
Yeah.
But this is the problem. There are a number of activist judges and activist lawyers. They earn a lot of money for what they do, and they can pursue their own, if you like, moral crusades within their profession. But again, that's downstream of the Human Rights Act because it's changed incentives and it's attract a certain cohort of people into the profession. The key thing is do not give them the legal tools to make these decisions. The Human Rights Act, at the very bare minimum, needs to be amended. But ideally, I think you could get rid of it because most civil liberties are protected by common and statute law.
100%.
The HRA, the Human Rights Act, it's a criminal's charter. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And, thankfully, people are cottoning on to this fact. And that's...
And we seem to be seeing these kind of stories on a daily basis at the moment. But listen, Mike, thank you for being on with us. It's always good to get an expert view. He's Dr. Mike Jones, political scientist and migration expert with us on the programme. 3:15. Let's go to the voice of doom then. This was the political mystery voice bit. Before the news, we played you this voice.
I said something then.
I said something then. Who is that? These are some of the wrong guesses. John Redwood. No, we had him on earlier. Peter Barnes, it is not. Nick Owen, I'm assuming the broadcaster, Nick Owen. No. However, we did get a lot of correct answers on this. It was, can we hear it again, Amy?
I said something then.
It is a man of almost legendary status before the BBC went nuts. Former BBC political editor John Sargent. Who was just a bumptious, wonderful, well-informed, huge-brain, diligent journalist who did it old school and did it brilliantly. And he would also appear on things like Have I Got News For You in his latter years, I think. John Sargent was the right answer. Famous, do you remember when Thatcher was standing to, just before she was ousted, she was in Paris at the time, and she didn't win on the first ballot in the leadership contest. And she came out of the hotel in Paris to announce that she would be putting her name forward for the next stage or something like that. And Sargent was there with the microphone. Somebody said, "Where's the microphone?" And he went, "Here's the mic." There were 10,000 microphones there. And he went, "Here's the microphone," like it was the official mic. He was great. He was a good guy. Still around, by the way, just not broadcasting anymore. He's enjoying a lovely retirement. John Sargent was the correct answer. Let's go back to your calls. This is Ian down in London. Ian, what have you got for us? Hi.
Ian, can you please give me the latest brochure of all the human rights countries that go with it? Because I want to go on holiday and I want to know where I can actually visit just to see where I'd like to live.
That's a good point. Yeah, just go anywhere, really, because you can cite some kind of weird, curious reason. They'll let you live there.
Well, I don't know if America would do it, because I think Donald would do his nuts.
Yeah, he'd probably just knock you out, because that's how he rolls over there.
But thank you very much. But if you've got a catalogue, let me know.
I will. It's coming in the post. Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. Simon says, when we get to net zero, the government will pop a giant dome over the UK to keep it all to ourselves. Truman Show vibes. And, of course, we will all be given free T-shirts emblazoned with "We did it." Get with the programme, Collins. Have a great weekend, says Simon in Devon. Maybe it's as simple as that. We're going to go back to EVs as well shortly, because we got Will Guy, tech correspondent, coming on with us. There is a battle going on in the world of EVs, obviously. The Chinese are being very dominant. Tesla isn't what it was. I don't believe, by the way, that people have stopped buying Teslas because of Donald Trump and Elon Musk's relationship with him. There might be one or two. I think Teslas have just kind of there's a bit of a tipping point, isn't there, with any product? You know, you bring one product out, it's the most famous one, it's almost not the only one, but it's the only one at a certain standard. So everybody bought one who was interested in that kind of car. Now there's other cars there, so naturally there's more choice. That's the whole point of capitalism, right? There's more choice, so people are going elsewhere. I don't think that there's a huge demise in Teslas because Elon Musk pulled out his chainsaw in the Doge department and started cutting waste. No, there are other reasons. But who is winning, who is supreme at the moment in the world of EVs? Will go out with us in just a little bit. More from you on the phones as well, 0344 499 1000.
Although there might be a good idea in there somewhere, this is just moving the deck chairs around. We haven't heard from the Prime Minister what he intends to improve patients by doing this. He hasn't set himself any targets or outcomes. It's just at risk of being a bureaucratic exercise. So and if you look at where Labour have done this already, where NHS England was never created, is Labour-run Wales, which has the worst waiting times anywhere in the country and the worst patient outcomes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Justin says, a car dealer told me that he wouldn't touch an electric car with a barge pole and the market was collapsing. I think it's a rich person's toy. If you've got 40 grand to splurge and you don't mind not getting anything back. It is interesting, and I read that out just to show the kind of the breadth of differing opinion. Lots of people getting in touch saying it's now the standard car for many people and they're supremely reliable in all forms and cheaper to run. But who do you believe? This in from Fox's fan who says, afternoon Ian, your current guest said that EV sales have dropped. The reason is no one wants them anymore, is more and more people are waking up to the net zero scam. Also, they are not more environmentally friendly than an internal combustion engine car. Batteries cannot be destroyed without, they have to be buried, says Simon. Simon, thank you for that. That is the big question mark over it, isn't it? Has nobody done some more due diligence on this? Because we do hear varying stories on this one, that, yeah, that used to be the case. That's the one I keep hearing more lately. The point that Simon made is the one that I've mostly heard, which is that building the battery is an environmental catastrophe, and getting rid of it is even worse, because you can't really get rid of it. And then, of course, you've got the cost of making the car, the weight of the car, which has an impact on the environment, the transportation of the car. You've got to transport all cars, but, you know, you'd have to still include electric in that. So I keep hearing that, and then others going, oh, no, that's what it used to be like. It's not like that anymore. Really? Is it not? The battery's made in a different way? All that stuff that they have to dig for, the lithium and God knows what else, and little kids going down wells in distant countries so that somebody can drive a brand spanking new electric car. Is that no longer true? Let's go to Phil in Hertfordshire, on EV vans in particular. Phil, what are your thoughts? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, I mean, I run a small business, and we did look at it. We did consider it. Now, if we was couriering, it wouldn't be so bad, because if you think about it, you start off with a heavy load at the beginning of your day, and progressively your load gets lighter as you drop off. So with us, we would have racking on the van. We'd have all our tools on the van, all wrapped on there, and say materials that we're going to sort of carry around with us. Yeah. So our van is a constant weight. So straight away, I haven't got an empty van anymore. And all these sort of figures and that you're given, all based on empty vans.
That's the trouble, isn't it? And if you're carrying around a steel girder and 2 cement mixers, I mean, that's really... It's not exactly going to be light, is it?
No, and then you get into the situation, Ian, where you have to tow. If you've got a trailer and you've got to put some ballast on the back.
That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. So you load up with ballast, you shove a pallet of bricks on the van or whatever. So you've got sort of bricks or whatever on the back of the trailer. You've got your van loaded up with plasterboard. You think of that weight on that's additional, and then you're pulling that around. That's really going to suck the juice out of the battery. Yeah. And then also, sort of they get a battering, don't they, the old builders vans and construction vans. So your resale value is going to be even less.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's going to be a much harder sell, isn't it? So with your Amazon boys and all the rest of it, yeah, I mean, they've got their parcel. I know some parcels are heavy, but yeah, let's assume that, say, 40% are quite light. But regardless, that van's going to get lighter by the minute, right? Because you're taking less of it. If you go to work with a van full of plant and tools, that's going to be the case all the time.
That's right. I know. I mean, have you ever seen in the back of a van, a lot of builders' van, after it's been used for a few years?
Oh, man alive, yeah.
Yeah, even if you sort of ply line it and you can protect it as much as you can, but straight away you see in ply lining it and then racking, you're putting weight on it straight away.
More weight on it as well. So it's got its, because a previous caller mentioned couriers that deliver linen around hotels, the napkins and the tablecloths. That makes sense, right? Because it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's reasonably light. I know, if it's packed, it's heavy, but it always gets lighter.
Absolutely, yeah. But the majority of the tradesmen's vans, they're not going to get lighter.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's practical for tradespeople, really.
Until they invent a battery that is so solid, it will make no difference and it will run forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're a few years off that one, aren't we?
I think we are. But it's like anything, isn't it? But when the petrochemical industry was started, sort of founded back in the beginning of the centuries, in the 1900s, it slowly progressed and things improved, didn't it?
100%.
So when you look at the time span from then to now and the advancements we've made, I think we're too soon, EV, to say, yep.
100%. 100%.
It's too soon. It's too soon.
And I'm going to say it again, I sound like a stuck record. I don't know anybody who doesn't want to drive a more efficient, cleaner, cheaper car.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
Yeah, precisely. Absolutely. But the rush for it is, I think, the problem.
I think we're a good 50 years too soon.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Listen, great call. Phil, thank you. A cracking weekend. Good call from Phil. This is Dev, who's over there in Dan, over there. Is it Dan or Dev? Oh, it says Dev there, Dan there. I don't care. The Big D, where are you?
Am I talking to you now, mate?
You are, Dev. Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah. Bear with me, a bit nervous, first time caller. Basically, I live in Swindon. We've got a a pressing plant that supplies all the panels for the Mini in Oxford.
Okay.
We are struggling. We are struggling big time, and there are going to be massive job losses in the motor industry if this net zero crap is not sorted out.
What are you struggling with specifically, Dev? Give us a bit more detail on the issue here.
But basically, we're limited because we've got to supply so many electric cars, but people don't want electric cars. Yeah. And we got showrooms that are waiting for either petrol or diesel minis, and we can't, because of this net zero, again, Miliband, I don't know, whatever planet he's on, we're struggling.
And it is that's quite, that's not like a rumour. That's quite obvious, right? There is a real struggle, a problem in this industry.
Yes, again, Swindon Presses is owned by BMW, and I've been there 36 years.
Yeah.
And I've had a good living out of while I've been there. But now we've got young apprentices coming through, and it's not honestly, and it is not looking good at all. We've lost what we call build, as in volume, from the start of the year because of this net zero crap. Excuse my French, but something needs to be done. He needs to be, I don't know, left on some island somewhere, like someone said earlier. But it needs to be. Honestly, we've got young apprentices that are starting their working lives, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at all.
That's interesting. Dev, thank you. That's an inside view as well from Dev in Swindon as to what is happening. I especially when you think of, cost of living stuff. We were talking earlier about council tax going up. National insurance issues for employees, small businesses, buying food. I mean, we did the list yesterday, didn't we, on the programme? I mean, it's a massive list of stuff. And yes, some people will there's always someone who makes things happen, whether you put it on the plastic, take out a finance agreement in some respects. If people really want something, we live in a world where you kind of make it work even if you're up against it. But I think overarchingly, there's real problems here. And if you are just looking after the coffers a little bit more than you used to, even if you're not royally skinned, but you're just aware that it's tricky time, so you've got to be careful, next couple of years could be a little wobbly. I don't imagine you're going to get out there and buy yourself a 40 grand electric car, are you? Gary says, I think you'll find that EV sales are falling because governments are starting to remove the huge incentives that were there on day one to encourage us to start using them. In future, I think we can expect less carrot to buy EVs and more stick for not buying them. Oh, darn right, Gary. Yeah, the last point will be absolutely true. Because, yes, the things like road tax, there was no road tax on cars. There was all sorts of other little sweeteners that were attached to buying an EV. A lot of that has gone. Road tax, if it's not in already, is coming in. And what they're likely to do is, it'll come in. It'll be annoying if you haven't had to pay it up until now, but it'll be cheaper than the petrol or the diesel cars where the road tax will be off the flipping scale. You can just see it now. The Range Rover Sport with, a £3,000 road tax bill. Interesting one here when we were talking about Tesla and sales of Tesla going down. Neil says, I disagree with you on Tesla. I really do think there's a backlash against Musk. I would never buy one of his cars, and I'm in the market. I guess that would affect people. But I also, given the vast drop, and of course you have to look at car sales over the course of a longer period of time, but recently, and some of the numbers for Tesla have been really challenging. That's why Donald Trump went out and sat in one yesterday. He literally did an ad for Tesla at the White House, going, hey, it's got computers and stuff. He actually did it. I sense that we're in that place where, there'll be some people who say, I don't like Musk, I don't like Trump. I mean, 11% drop worldwide, 70% drop in Europe. But I mean, this isn't they've only been around for a couple of months, Trump and Musk. Is that the full explanation? I also think there are just more, I think fewer people are buying cars, and of the car buying electric cars, there's a bit of that, and the ones that are buying them now have a greater choice than they ever did. You can't extrapolate those basic facts, surely, out of the equation. We'll get some detail on that. Will Guide, our tech correspondent, is going to join us shortly. Who is winning the EV battle? Is it the Chinese, is it the Americans, or is it someone else? More on that, plus what is happening in Indian call centres, and what have Apple unleashed on us this week? In fact, they're on two of our stories today. Details coming up. Right now, 3:30, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25 to 4. This in from Matt, who says, talking of EVs, EVs are not supremely reliable. My wife's Kia EV6 has broken down for the third time and looks like she won't now get it back for weeks as parts are being sea freighted over. Don't believe the hype. Mild disagreement on Tesla from different people. Yes, it's because of Musk. No, it's not because of that. The direction of travel was always going to go down for the dominant company at some point. I guess there's something in that as well. Will Geitz, our tech correspondent, of course, with us on this one. I mean, there were some, afternoon to you, by the way, Will, I mean, there were some tricky headlines, nothing that any business owner wants to see, that their company has dropped by 70% in Europe and 11% worldwide. But there could be many reasons for this.
Yeah, I'm going to choose my words carefully because viewers and listeners often call me out and say I've got nothing good to say about Elon Musk. But that was perhaps the most embarrassing press conference I have ever seen at the White House. The South Lawn became Honest Donnie's car lot for about 2 hours. He was extolling the virtue of the entire Tesla model range. And do you want to know what makes it worse, Ian? He put on his X account later in the day the referral code that you get. If you buy one, you can get referrals to get discounts. And Donald Trump shared his referral code. So
I mean, that takes it to a level that the most diehard Trump fan could not say that is a good look. I mean, I thought it was a bit weird that there you had Donald Trump at the White House getting in a Tesla and going, wow, it's got, I mean, he did sound like an old git, didn't he, when he sort of went, you know, well, it's got a lot of...
It's got computers.
It's got computers in it. Yeah, that's been around for a couple of years now, Donnie. And I thought, it's a bit weird. He's got the President of the United States, the man who is charged with saving money for the US, has got the President literally advertising his car. For those who didn't see it or hear it, then have a little look at this.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. That's beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. Is this just a brake?
Yeah, it's just a brake and an accelerator.
I don't want to.
Give secret service a heart attack.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. There's no gears.
This is really amazing. It's really amazing. Let's take a look at it. Think Biden could get into that?
I mean, I don't even know how to respond to that. I mean, you can say it's funny, and it is a bit funny, but I mean, what is kind of galling, Will, and just a bit weird, is the President of the United States doing a car ad for somebody who works for him, and then the somebody who works for him, Elon Musk, gives a promo code on social media, and the President then retweets. I mean, he's literally advertising the guy's business. Now, you could say, hey, it's America, anything can happen, it's not illegal, so what? It's a bit weird, right?
That reminds me of the last time I picked you up from a train station and you were amazed by an electric car. I had to explain to you it had no gears, and I plugged it in to charge it up rather than use fuel. I know you were absolutely staggered.
I think that was just like a bit of witchcraft on your part. I mean, look at the part of the country we were in. I mean, you know, people have eyes on their palms over there in Bristol. So, you know, I was naturally cynical.
There's a lot to unpack here with this story around Trump and Musk, because I think Musk has largely, with this whole Doge efficiency thing, thought he was doing the Lord's work in driving efficiency in the US. But it's become apparent over the last few weeks that the hatred that Musk has received in Europe for maybe not, depending on your view, doing a couple of Nazi salutes at some events, definitely trying to interfere in the German election, didn't do him any favours in Germany. And since you've had this kind of Doge thing where loads of people have lost their jobs in the US in the name of ruthless efficiency, there's been some legitimate hatred around Elon Musk, to the extent that Tesla chargers have been vandalized, dealerships have been attacked. Now, lots of people are blaming that on the left, and the left not being able to cope. But the reality is Elon Musk, being a very rich person, has impacted a lot of people's lives. And those people are no longer looking at Elon Musk and thinking he's an all-round wonderful guy. It's been a really interesting couple of weeks.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean to say they were going to buy his car anyway, does it? I mean, so is that the explanation?
Yeah, but we didn't have people attacking his dealerships and burning his charger ports.
I mean, that would be, one would assume, left-wing activists, wouldn't it? I mean, I can't think of any other group.
Why do you have to call them left-wing activists? Why can't you call them people that are fed up with the way that they've been treated by the administration and Elon Musk?
No, that will be left-wing. That will absolutely be left-wing activists, because most people would never do that, even if they felt really strongly about it.
You're falling into the narrative of suggesting that just because it's in a disagreement with Elon Musk, it has to be fully political.
I don't imagine it would be a right-wing activist. Put it that way.
But you've had people in the UK. There's been billboards and bus ads saying various slogans around why you wouldn't buy a Tesla, appearing all around the country. And you've had people saying, well, they should be reported and arrested for vandalising an advert. It's the ultimate expression in terms of freedom of speech.
Yeah, but it's been vandalism is, a criminal offence. So,
But vandalism.
If you had to go into Paddy
Ian,
Power and say, take a guess at, you think, what mentality is responsible for that?
Who encouraged American voters to storm Congress? I don't want to get into a conversation. I'm trying not to make this political. I want to just talk about the fact that Elon Musk is having a terrible couple of weeks.
Okay, so you're all right. So no, I hear what you're saying. I know this is not specifically you having a pop at Musk. It is the interpretation of how some people are seeing this story, that these are the responses. The fact that he's having a torrid time with his business, some people will be responding in these ways. All right, regardless of who we think is behind it. I would counter some of it, Will, by saying, in addition to that, before Trump got into power, before Musk was, given the impressive title, there were already wobbles at Tesla, of course, and we reported on them a number of times.
Of course.
And I think a lot of that, I mean, I said to the guys earlier, we were talking, my comparison, do you remember when everybody wanted a soda stream until everyone got a soda stream? And everyone goes, I don't want one of those anymore. Everyone's got one of those things. I think Tesla has suffered a little bit of that. It was a cool car, and now so many of them around, it's not a cool car anymore. And at the same time, the Chinese have come along. They've invented a load of them. Other countries have done the same. The choice has gone from 1 to 101 in a year.
Sort of. There's been a lot of Chinese cars in the market before. But if we go, what challenges me most here is if we're going to object to Elon Musk's vehicles because of Elon Musk's political views, the dumb stuff he's done, the silly way he's behaved, I'd argue you probably want to apply some of that lens to choosing and purchasing a Chinese vehicle too. The reality is that Chinese
100%. Isn't that interesting? That's a great analogy. Yeah. Hang on. What's with the moral kind of hypothecating of Donald Trump when literally a murderous communist regime is responsible for the opposition?
You're in an interesting position though, where clearly Tesla is smarting. Clearly, Elon Musk needed a hug. He needed a pick-me-up. He was clearly feeling really demoralised, which is why Trump gave him a near 2-hour ad pitch on the South Lawn of the White House. Things are bad at Tesla. You're getting to the stage where investors in Tesla, big institutional investors, are questioning whether Elon Musk has really got his eye on the ball. He's trying to launch rockets to Mars. He's claiming that he's having massive cyber attacks on X. X was down for a few hours earlier this week. He accused Ukraine. He accused massive conspiracies and cyber attacks. The reality was it was a really industrial, rudimentary form of hacking, old, and it was a surprise that the X platform fell over in the way it did. Not because it was anything nefarious from whatever group chose to do the hack. It was a pretty lame hack anyway.
And also, and as you rightly say, I think there's been a lot of, in the kind of petrol head world or electric head world, that sense that the boss, this was this cool guy, bit quirky, bit weird, but we liked him because he was quirky and weird, and he ran this thing and he started it. Well, he didn't quite start it from scratch, but he sort of certainly grew it. And now he's got his finger in so many pies. Has he taken his focus off it? Listen, go on. Well, very quickly. So move on.
The mystique has fallen around Elon Musk. He's so much in present consciousness. He's not important or special. He's not Tony Stark. He's more like Tony Hawk's.
Which one, the comedian or the skateboarder? There we go. Let's move to this. Let's move to this story. The technology secretary in the UK, science and tech. We've got a science and tech secretary called Peter Kyle. Apparently, he's using AI to get policy advice. This is a terrible look.
Well, what's even more interesting is that you can actually make AI requests a freedom of information request able. Because if you went and said, "Can I have the MP Peter Kyle's Google search history," the government agency would come back and say, "No, we're not giving you that. That doesn't fit in scope." So I think a lot of people are going to wake up to the fact that AI search history is FOI, freedom of informationable. So lots of people are going to be writing to lots of people asking to see what they've been using it for. I think it's quite intriguing that he's done it. I don't think it's as bad a look as everybody's suggesting. He is the AI minister, so he should be looking at this stuff. But Ian, this shows you a couple of things. The government is rushing to tell us all to start using AI. The reality is, if you are a company and your staff start pumping in information about your business into ChatGPT or one of any of the other chatbots, your information and private information about your business becomes publicly available information they can use to train their AI. So companies have to be really careful and think really long and hard about what their staff are doing. And this piece from Chris Stokel-Wilson was a fantastic piece of journalism, and everybody in government is going to be panicking now they realise that they can get freedom of information requests against ChatGPT search history.
Yeah, something Tony Blair said was the worst decision he ever made to open up the freedom of information thing, because they thought they were going to get like 3 people a year was going to go. Oh, could you tell me how many people go to jail, please? It turns out it's thousands a day, quite literally. We're going to talk about call centres using AI, but there's a twist to this story. It's extraordinary. What's happening to UK's offshore wind farms and why they might change in the way they look. And we might even bring you the latest from Apple as well. Details on the way. This is Talk.
Although there might be a good idea in there somewhere, this is just moving the deck chairs around. We haven't heard from the Prime Minister what he intends to improve patients by doing this. He hasn't said himself any targets or outcomes. It's just at risk of being a bureaucratic exercise. So and if you look at where Labour have done this already, where NHS England was never created, is Labour-run Wales, which has the worst waiting times anywhere in the country and the worst patient outcomes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. We've got Peter Cardwell with us after the news at 4. He'll be in before then to tell us what is going on. We've got Will Guyatt, our tech correspondent, with us. Let's have a quick look, Will, at this Apple story. Pressure grows on to hold secret Apple data privacy hearing in public. Just briefly tell us the story. What are people looking for? What's happened here?
Yeah, this is the bizarrest story. A long story cut very short. Apple have switched off a kind of encryption for users in the UK, which enabled them to have their data securely stored. The idea was you had the key and only you had it, and Apple wouldn't have access to it. The government wanted a door or access into this service, and Apple said no. But what's happening, Ian, is this is all going on behind closed doors. So there's various bits and pieces leaking into the press, but we've understood that there's a private tribunal going on today to hear Apple's appeal around this particular story. But what's most interesting for me here, Ian, is Apple have talked about this and have clearly gone public with the fact that this has happened. What tech companies have been asked to do the same thing by our government and have either not published any information about it or have rolled over and given them access in one way or another to our personal information, because other services use encryption too. So this is an interesting conversation. The government isn't commenting because it says it doesn't comment on active matters, matters of national security. And I don't think Apple are able to comment too, other than to say they've switched off this level of encryption. So it's a proper mess, and I'd be really keen to know what the government is aiming to get here and whether or not any other services are impacted too.
So Apple are trying to argue the case they should be able to encrypt like they did before. Is that broadly it?
Yes, yes, exactly.
We'll watch with interest. What's going on in the world of call centres, Will? Here's a curious story.
Yeah, this is an intriguing story, this one. Call centres are now using AI in cases to soften accents. Now, I'm not entirely sure what I make of this story, but it is intriguing because the call centres and the companies involved in this say giving foreign call centre workers who speak in English a slight US lilt or tint to their accent is making people less angry and spending more time communicating with exactly the same contact centre staff with their accents slightly altered via a real-time form of AI on calls. I don't know what that says, whether that says something about the propensity to outsource our call centres, the anger of people in different countries for people who don't like foreign accents.
So they can change an Indian accent, being the obvious stereotypical example of a call centre that you might get through to. Although it's the real person speaking, the system can change their accent from Indian to, more of a kind of American lilt.
More of a softened American lilt. You're not going from somebody in India to, a disgruntled Italian plumber in Brooklyn. You're not going to that kind of level of difference in accent. You know what I mean? That difference.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
What's right? What's here? Your mobile phone's not working? Come on, I know a man who can fix this. I love that idea. I have to say, one of the problems with, let's say, foreign call centres is something in the equation of the conversation tells you as the consumer that the person you're talking to doesn't really know anything about what they're talking about, because they don't get the atmosphere, the backdrop, the kind of the cultural element to it. And it doesn't matter whether they're in Ireland or India, to be honest. I think people sense that you need an intimacy, a cultural or a recognisable intimacy in your conversation. And if you don't get it, and I wouldn't get it from an American either, for that matter, if I thought I was talking to somebody in a call centre in Brooklyn, then, that might be a problem too. Even though, mostly if you speak to an Indian call centre, you get people who speak perfect English. There's never a problem in that respect. But there is something about an accent that can divorce you from the severity of the problem. That's what I think goes on.
Yeah, and don't forget, they always used to, train people in the mornings with here's what happened in EastEnders or Coronation Street last night.
So they go, did you watch Curry last night in a very sort of thick foreign accent, knowing that they don't know what they're saying. Final one, wind farms are set for a facelift. What the hell is going on here, Will?
Yeah, apparently they're going to change wind farms from the sort of almost white colour, slightly off-white colour, to black to stop birds, etc., hitting wind farms. Now, this is happening offshore first, which is quite interesting. But I think changing them from kind of the neutral sort of white colour that we've got now to sort of a more industrial kind of grey-black colour would make them look like something out of Blade Runner, make them look more dystopian. I think a windmill, a wind turbine, is a beautiful piece of kit. They look elegant on the hills. We should have more of them because they work incredibly successfully. They're the cheapest form of renewable green energy. So rather than slap solar panels everywhere, put some more wind turbines up.
Yeah. When they work, of course, that is. But that's a whole other story. But they will save birds' lives, apparently, by being a different colour.
Yeah, well, that whole thing about birds is intriguing because cats kill more birds than wind turbines do.
Well, ban cats as well, because I can't stand those either.
Very true.
Will, have a good one. That is Will Guyot. Thank you very much. Talks Tech correspondent. For those of you, every time we have Will on and they go, he must be some sort of left-winger because he has a certain viewer. Will literally helped write the Reform UK manifesto, if that helps you, all right, with his politics. Just putting it out there. Peter Cardwell is here. Did I hear you
I'm not talking to you.
Because of the cat thing?
Yeah, we're just another 2 minutes of silence here.
Okay. Ofcom fans, there's going to be 2 minutes of silence because of the cat reference.
You finally shut me up.
I now have to apologise to Peter, who's a cat person more than a dog person.
More a dog person, more a cat person than a dog person, but I do love dogs as well. So much so that I'm writing a book about both of them.
You're writing a book about cats and dogs?
It's called Political Animals. It's about the cats and dogs.
Oh, of course you are. Yes, sorry. Yes, I thought that was just about cats.
No.
And
cats
hamsters,
and dogs.
maybe.
Cats and dogs, yeah. Interviewed Rishi Sunak the other day about it, about his dog.
What's he got? Is it some sort of spaniel?
It's a red Labrador or something. I can't remember the exact breed. It's not a red. It's got the word red on it, but it's a Labrador as well. It's
Red Adair, Red Squirrel.
I'm not sure. It's called Nova. Anyway, so apparently got on okay with Larry.
How was Rishi? Was he all right?
Yeah, he was in good form. Yeah. Interviewed Sue Gray as well, so that was quite interesting.
That must have been interesting to Rishi gets a phone call saying, "Hey, the media want to talk to me again. Oh, this is good. What's it about? Cats and dogs.
It's about your dog. Yeah, exactly.
What is coming up after 4?
Well, we've got Lord Bethell, the former health minister, talking about perhaps 10,000 jobs to go at NHS England. But what's more interesting to me, I think, is sickness benefits soaring under Labour and whether